bienvenidos a Xperienzium. Y ahora sí, arrancamos con el evento. ¡Genial! ¡Yeah! Ahora sí, bienvenidos a Xperienzium. A ver, les quiero contar un poquito de lo que tenemos el día de hoy. Ya saben, hoy día es el día del cierre. El día de hoy nos va a acompañar Alonso en todo lo que es los comentarios y también el Q&A. Así que ya saben, cualquier duda o consulta del evento, Alonso va a estar con gusto en responderlas. Bueno, me gustaría empezar que sea una semana del CX Day, así que bueno, este evento se ha hecho justamente por ese día. Hemos tratado de hacer 5 días para que toda la información pertinente pueda llegar a ustedes. Así que bueno, demos un aplauso a nuestras casas por el CX Day, que gracias a este CX Day hemos podido cerrar toda esta idea del evento. Acuérdense que el CX Day no es solamente el día martes, no solamente fue el día martes y no solamente es la semana, en esta semana, sino que hay que tratar de hacer que todos los días de nuestra vida inculquemos el CX Day en las cosas que hacemos, el CX, perdón, en las cosas que hacemos. Es todo un reto. De hecho, ahora nos han comentado muchísimo las personas que han participado, pero se puede hacer, se puede lograr. De hecho, hemos tenido gente de mucha trayectoria que lo viene haciendo hace muchos años. Así que ya sabes, si aún estás remando ese barco, sigue con mucha fe porque el CX es una realidad. Bueno, antes de empezar, me encantaría saber, ya con el último día de Xperienzium, ¿qué te han parecido estos 5 días de evento? Me gustaría conocer un poquito de ustedes. Ahí por ahí nos han comentado un poco al inicio, las personas que recién se conectan. Yo soy Sandra Linares. Ese es el último día de evento de Xperienzium, con mucha pena, pero también con mucha felicidad porque ya hemos logrado compartir mucho conocimiento. Para las personas que no me conocen, yo soy directora de Marketing y Comunicaciones de Clientrika y ha sido todo un honor ser parte de este evento. Así que ya sabes, cuéntenos en este último día de Xperienzium, ¿qué te han parecido estos 5 días? Cuéntenos, queremos saber un poco más de ustedes. Ya saben, pueden escribirnos mediante el chat. Por ahí nos están escribiendo. Perfecto. Bueno, ya saben que hoy día es el último día de Xperienzium, así que con nosotros será un gusto. Laura, todos los días puntualísima. Laura, agradecemos tu puntualidad y tu fidelidad. Gracias. Sabemos que los conectarse todos los días es súper difícil, pero agradecemos esa pasión. Mil gracias, Laura. Luciana, todas las ponencias de temas variados muy interesantes. Excelente evento. No, gracias a ustedes. Creo que ya hay un grupo de fieles seguidores que siempre están, que siempre nos escriben en redes, que siempre comparten. Gracias a todas esas personas que siempre han estado apoyándonos con el evento. Matías nos dice muy buena la experiencia. Gracias, Matías. Espero que también podamos seguir brindando más eventos como este. Gracias, Heidi. Perfecto. Andrés, excelente semana, muy rica en nuestra disciplina. Totalmente de acuerdo contigo, Andrés. Totalmente para cada vez hacer crecer esta disciplina que es tan, tan interesante. Perfecto. Isabela, muchos temas interesantes y excelentes ponentes. Así es, si no sabes, Isabela, lo que se viene el día de hoy para cerrar con broche de oro, tenemos 3 ponentes de lujo. Así que muy, muy atenta a lo que se viene el día de hoy. Muchísimas gracias, no, a ti, por todo el conocimiento. Eduardo, ha sido increíble y espero lo nuevo que van a hacer por el CX. Sí, nosotros ya estamos muy ansiosos por contarles todo lo que se viene. Tenemos un plan bastante claro de lo que queremos lograr nosotros con Experiencia y Clientrika, así que muy pronto van a saber sobre todo esto. Claudia López, saludos desde Guadalajara, México. Wow, voy a extrañar los saludos en verdad desde todas las partes del mundo. Gracias por seguirnos siempre. Esa energía, ¿no? De comunidad, la verdad que se va a extrañar demasiado en estos días. Y bueno, Me puedo pasar un montón de tiempo leyendo, pero bueno, vamos a leer algunos más. Ha sido realmente enriquecedor la gran apertura que han tenido todos los panelistas, todo el gusto de participar los 5 días. ¡Wow, Yesenia! Muchísimas gracias. Muchísimas gracias. Y bueno, vayamos avanzando. José, gracias. María, grata experiencia. Genial, genial. La verdad que no podemos estar más contentos y agradecidos, sobre todo ustedes con su sintonía. Así que bueno, para avanzar un poquito, ya a ver, ¿qué se viene el día de hoy? ¿Qué es lo que se viene el día de hoy? A ver, se viene la charla, vamos a arrancar con la charla de experiencias digitales, liderada por Patricia Goicochea. Así que ya Patricia, dentro de pocos minutos va a empezar con esta linda, linda charla e interesante charla. De ahí vienen la charla, la pandemia, el momento donde no, entre paréntesis muy claro, todo cambió. Rick Denton. Para esta charla vamos a necesitar un traductor, así que ustedes ya saben, las personas que han tenido experiencia con esa modalidad de traducción, simplemente en la barra de herramientas del Zoom van a poder cambiar el idioma y listo. ¿Ok? Para que ustedes puedan tener mayor libertad porque vamos a tener un traductor. Entonces, no se preocupen por el tema del idioma. Nosotros ya hemos pensado en eso, siempre para brindarles el mejor servicio, la mejor experiencia. Así que igual va a pasar con Stefan Osthaus en 5 pasos para una excelente experiencia de cliente. También no es hispanohablante, así que no se preocupen que nosotros ya tenemos todo calculado para que ustedes puedan escuchar la charla sin ningún problema. Ahora sí me gustaría agradecer a nuestros partners. Ustedes saben de que sin ellos no podría haberse llevado a cabo el evento, ¿no? Para empezar tenemos el official partner, que es la CXPA. Vamos un poquito más con el technology partner, que es Customers Cubes, Question Pro y Genesis. Y los media partners, que es Dr. Cess y Teneva, así. En los academic partners tenemos la CEPUC, CXPA, Customer Experience, Recognized Training Provider, Customer Institute, y como community partner, Customer Employees Experience, CX Latam y ACX. Y por último, como los event partners, un poquito de lo que hemos tenido estos días de los eventos presenciales, tanto en Perú, México y Chile, quienes nos han apoyado: Space, Starts, Comunal, Ameba e IF. Así que muchísimas gracias a todos ellos. Saben de que sin ellos, Xperienzium no se podría haber llevado a cabo. Ahora sí, antes de empezar, porque ya me están comunicando que Patricia ya se encuentra por interno, tuvimos gran acogida nosotros, una gran acogida en el tema de el sorteo, así que en lugar de sortear una ebook, llegamos a la conclusión que mejor sortear 3 ebooks para que pueda llegar el conocimiento a más personas. Queremos que haya más ganadores, así que, bueno, ¿cómo ganar estas ebooks? A ver, ¿cuáles van a ser para empezar? Hemos elegido lo mejor de lo mejor para ustedes, ¿no? Contenidos, no se preocupen, todos están en español. Si hay un tema del idioma, hemos puesto estos 3 libros: Ada y Van Well, la idea detrás de lograr la lealtad de sus clientes y mantenerla, por Laura Durón. También tenemos la Universidad de Disney, cómo la estrategia laboral y empresarial de Disney forma a los empleados más leales y competentes del mundo. Qué interesante, por Doug Leap. Y por último tenemos este gran libro de Wall Street Journal, un bestseller, Driving to the Light, de Joseph Micheli. Así que ya saben, todos estos libros están en español y se van a sortear como parte del concurso de Xperienzium. ¿Cómo participar? Igual, si no te acuerdas, yo te la voy a recordar de una vez. Es la semana del CX y solamente tienes que respondernos en nuestras redes o en el chat de qué manera el CX está impactando, crees que impactó o impactará en tu vida. ¿Qué es hacer? Escribirlo en estos comentarios o en los comentarios de nuestras redes sociales. Nosotros tenemos ya mapeadas todas las personas que vienen contestando. Y por último, seguirnos en LinkedIn, Instagram, etiquetar a 2 amigos. Así que ya saben, el día de hoy es el último día que vamos a sacar la información. La próxima semana, en los primeros días de la próxima semana, vamos a estar anunciando al ganador. Así que muchísima suerte a todos. Ahora sí, ya estamos listos para empezar con esta última fecha de Xperienzium. Ha sido todo un gusto, como les había comentado. Y me gustaría presentar, ahora sí me indican que ya se encuentra por interno, a nuestra próxima LATAM Speaker. Ella es Patricia Goicochea, va a presentar el tema de experiencias Phygitales. Les cuento un poquito más. Hola Patricia, acá justo se encuentra al interno. ¿Cómo estás?
Hola Sandra,
Bienvenida,
¿qué tal?
bienvenida al
Buenos
último
días.
día del evento.
Muchas
¿Qué
gracias.
tal? Perfecto, para que conozcan un poquito más de Patricia, les cuento que ella actualmente es gerente de Marketplace en Grupo F, tiene más de 15 años de experiencia profesional en CX, en transformación, innovación e e-commerce, liderando operaciones en sectores como telecomunicaciones y retail. Así que Patricia, bienvenida, Xperienzium es todo tuyo.
Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo están? Buenos días. Nada, feliz de estar acá, de acompañarlos en el último día, casi recién bajada del avión. Eso lo contaba a Sebastián que he estado de vacaciones, así que nada, yo feliz de estar aquí acompañándolos. Déjenme ver, voy a comenzar a proyectar. Uy, me dice Sandra ahí si se ve. ¿Se ve?
Todo perfecto.
Ya, genial, estamos entonces. Nada, mi nombre es Pati Goicochea, ya me presentó Sandra, hoy gerente general del grupo del grupo no, ya quisiera, gerente general de juntos.com, ahí para comentarles, juntos.com es una nueva unidad de negocio dentro del grupo F, ya que es un marketplace. Hemos iniciado operaciones el 22 de febrero de este año, bueno, y una profesional de la experiencia cliente hoy está liderando una nueva unidad de negocio dentro del grupo. Y para hablar, digamos, de experiencias digitales, quería remontarme a saber qué cosa es una experiencia o comentar qué cosa es la experiencia cliente, ¿no? Bueno, todos los que estamos acá somos apasionados por la experiencia cliente y la experiencia cliente son todas las percepciones y emociones que se generan luego de las interacciones que tiene un cliente con la empresa, con nuestra marca, con nuestros productos, con nuestros servicios. Esa es la experiencia cliente. Ahora, sabiendo qué cosa es experiencia cliente, podemos hablar qué cosa es una experiencia Phygital. Una experiencia Phygital es que ese punto de contacto puede ser físico o digital. En mucho tiempo se habló de que todas las experiencias presenciales iban a acabarse, iban a haber o experiencias presenciales o experiencias digitales, y que en algún momento todo iba a ser 100% digital. Nada más falso que eso, ¿ya? La verdad es que hoy el cliente, el consumidor final, escoge qué tipo de experiencia o cómo quiere interactuar con cada punto de contacto. De por sí, Philip Kotler, en el último libro que ha escrito, que es Retail 4.0, nos dice que la era digital es un facilitador que nos va a ayudar a permitir crear productos, servicios, experiencias que se integran a las existentes, sean físicas o las sustituyen. Pero en el journey total siempre van a haber experiencias físicas y experiencias digitales. Y en algún momento inventarán, supongo, el término metaversales. Lo estoy inventando, ¿eh? Pero eso no creo que existe. Pero en esta era digital, la experiencia cliente es la principal prioridad, ¿no? Ahí sí todos estamos de acuerdo. Ni que van a ser 100% presenciales, ni 100% físicas, ni 100%, perdón, digitales. Pero en este mix, la experiencia cliente es la principal prioridad. ¿Y qué dice Philip Kotler? Y aquí les he, para no robar los derechos de autor, he copiado o le he tomado foto directamente al nuevo viaje del cliente que dice Philip Kotler en su libro Retail 4.0, ¿ya? El viaje del cliente cambia. Y lo que te dice es que un viaje del cliente tiene hoy 5 etapas y cada una de esas etapas puede ser un momento físico o un momento digital. Cuando descubres a la marca, cuando te sientes atraído hacia la marca, cuando preguntas o pides consejos a los amigos. O sea, y tú puedes ir presencialmente a mirar presencialmente a decirle a tu amigo, oye, dime, cuéntame qué cosa, cómo me recomiendas o no me recomiendas la marca, o te lees los comentarios en redes sociales. Ya de por sí, ahí es un momento digital, por ejemplo. O cuando descubres la existencia de una marca, cuando vas por la calle y miras una tienda, O cuando estás navegando en Facebook o en redes sociales y estás viendo marcas nuevas que te van apareciendo por marketing digital, ¿no? Cuando compras en línea, que es la cuarta etapa. Bueno, cuando compras, perdón, en la tienda física o en línea. Hoy, en la siguiente lámina les voy a dar un par de datos, ¿ya? Por ejemplo, hoy del 100% de las ventas, del 100% de las ventas digitales, casi el 60% de las compras son con retiro en tienda. Ya es una experiencia digital, por eso les digo, o sea, los clientes escogen la mejor parte de cada momento, o sea, la que le convenga más como cliente final, ¿no? Y paso 5, que tiene que ver con la recompra de los usos o por la fidelidad que has creado al cliente por los diferentes medios. Este es el nuevo viaje del cliente, es el nuevo recorrido del cliente que pasa por las diferentes etapas. Lo pueden encontrar en el libro de Philip Kotler, de verdad, súper bueno, totalmente recomendado. Ahora, ¿qué sabemos de las experiencias Phygitales? Y acá hay unos datos bien interesantes. El 70% de los compradores en línea esperan recoger los productos en la tienda. Miren, comienzas tu búsqueda virtualmente, pero terminas yendo a la tienda física a recoger el producto. Fíjate. Segundo, los compradores omnicanales tienen un valor de vida 30% más alto que aquellos que compran en un solo canal. Es decir, el tener diferentes canales, sean físicos o digitales, disponibles para el cliente, hacen que su valor de por vida aumente un 30%. El 71% de los compradores usan el celular para investigar en tiendas. Es decir, por el celular entran a ver el catálogo de la tienda y luego van a la tienda física. ¿Se entiende? Y pasa también al revés. Entonces, y este es un dato de Forrester, 30% de los clientes que fueron a retirar un producto compraron en tienda. Y esa es una oportunidad para el cross-selling. Es decir, tú vas, ese 70% que va a la tienda a recoger su producto, 30% adicional genera haciendo una compra en tienda física. Es decir, yo puedo comprar, imagínense, ¿no? En juntos.com, entro y compro un polo de Dockers. Dentro del polo de Dockers y pongo, lo voy a retirar en tienda de F y la Curazao. En una tienda de la Curazao de acá de Javier Prado. Lo recojo en la tienda y cuando estoy en la tienda me doy cuenta que también necesito comprar una olla arrocera y la compro. ¿Se entiende? Entonces, el 30% de los clientes que fueron a retirar un producto, compraron en tienda y gastaron un 35% más que los clientes en promedio. Casi el 50% de los clientes usan regularmente más de 4 puntos de contacto. Y generalmente esos 4 puntos de contacto tienden a ser 50% presencial y 50% digital. Entonces, en este contexto, hoy los clientes tienen a su disposición una serie de medios que te hacen saltar en cada momento de contacto por aquel canal o momento, sea presencial, sea físico, perdón, o digital, que más te haga sentir cómodo. En el último comité de retail vi este dato que me pareció muy interesante también, ¿ya? Porque inclusive en algún momento se hablaba y se decía, oye, las tiendas físicas van a desaparecer. No, no es cierto. Se complementa el mundo físico con el mundo digital. Este es el efecto halo, decían. Abrir una nueva tienda en el mercado conduce a un incremento en la página web de 37 a 40%. Datazo, ¿ah? Y esto sustenta mucho el hecho de tener, por ejemplo, un Amazon que ha abierto tiendas físicas, un Alibaba, bueno, ya la cerró. Habrá que ver el caso de negocio, pero tuvo el Amazon Forestar, que justo acá las tengo. Esta es de mi última visita este Amazon Forestar, si mal no recuerdo, es de Orlando. En Experiencias Phygitales, esta ya la cerró, pero bueno, estuvo hasta este año. Acá en Amazon Forestar tenía inclusive, miren, para ver cómo se conecta el mundo digital con el mundo físico, En una mesa tenía puesto lo que viste en TikTok. Físicamente, los libros que uno vio en TikTok. O los top sellers en Amazon. Esta es la tienda de Alibaba, por ejemplo, ¿no? O el streaming, también la venta por streaming, que en Corea es o sea, no solamente en Corea, en todos los países asiáticos es súper fuerte, y que acá en Perú también ya comenzamos a ver la venta por streaming. Son ejemplos de experiencias digitales del mundo y datos que les acabo de dar del mundo. Ahora, lo ideal, digamos, no es quedarnos con ejemplos solamente del mundo, sino aterrizarlos, como dicen uno de mis ex jefes, a la realidad real, ¿ya? Y la realidad real de Perú, les he traído el caso un poco del grupo F. Me quiero ir acá. En el grupo F soñamos en grande, ¿ya? Y acá quería contarles un poco quiénes somos en el grupo F. En el grupo F somos 5 marcas, 5 unidades de negocio. Tenemos las tiendas F, las tiendas Curazao, Motocor, Efectiva y Juntos, que es la nueva unidad de negocio que hoy tengo el privilegio de liderar. Somos más de 250 tiendas a nivel nacional, somos más de 5.000 familias y con mucho orgullo, donde más del 50% somos mujeres. En posiciones de liderazgo el 26%, pero en total de planilla, pues el 50% somos mujeres. Presidenta del Comité de Equidad también, a mucho orgullo. Entonces, en el grupo F hemos comenzado a trabajar lo que es el ecosistema, ¿verdad? Dentro del ecosistema del grupo F hemos decidido poner al cliente, al colaborador y a los sellers al centro de todas nuestras acciones y decisiones. Este es un modelo que no solamente tiene al cliente y al colaborador, sino también al seller. El seller es la tienda. Ahí quiero que se entienda un poco por el tipo de unidad de negocio que nosotros tenemos. En juntos.com somos un mall online, ¿ya? Es decir, que nosotros proporcionamos un espacio digital con toda la potencia de los canales presenciales del grupo F y brindamos o acercamos a los sellers, que son las tiendas, con los clientes finales. Eso es un marketplace, ¿sí? Imagínense como un Jockey Plaza, como un Real Plaza, pero virtual. Somos más de 900 tiendas disponibles para todos los clientes. Los espero de verdad, aprovechando el momento, los espero en juntos.com viviendo la experiencia. Entonces, en el grupo F hemos definido un ecosistema al servicio de nuestros clientes, de nuestros colaboradores y de nuestros sellers. Una de las preguntas que me hacen a veces es, oye, ¿a quién pones al centro? Pues depende de todas las personas o todos los stakeholders que son importantes para tu organización. En nuestro caso son clientes, colaboradores y sellers. Tenemos las 5 marcas de negocio que son Efectiva, Curazao, Juntos, F, Motocor, y todos los servicios, productos, servicios, áreas, unidades que tenemos disponible para ellos. Y aquí les quería contar un poco cuáles son esas experiencias digitales que hemos comenzado a crear. Creo que lo puse un poco al revés, déjenme retroceder un poquito nada más ya. Habiéndoles dicho qué es el grupo F, ¿cuál fue el reto que nos pusimos? Reconocer las interacciones entre el cliente y la empresa. ¿Sí? Pero reconocer las interacciones entre los clientes y la empresa en este mundo digital significa armar los blueprints, ¿ya? Los blueprints de experiencia. Yo particularmente, y como empresa no trabajamos mucho con Customer Journey, sino más con Blueprint. ¿Por qué? Porque el beneficio del Blueprint es que te muestra las dos partes de la organización, ¿no? Lo que siente el cliente y lo que la organización tiene que movilizar para que el cliente sienta esta experiencia. Entonces, reconocimos todas las interacciones entre el cliente y la empresa y definimos cuáles eran las experiencias digitales que queríamos comenzar a movilizar. Pero inclusive antes de reconocer las experiencias digitales que queríamos movilizar, reconocimos que existen experiencias digitales y que son parte de nuestro ecosistema y que son parte del grupo F como tal. Entonces, lo que comenzamos a hacer es diseñar esos blueprints, bueno, dibujarlos, trabajarlos, diseñarlos, optimizar esas experiencias, y aquí les voy a enseñar un poco los casos que hemos comenzado a trabajar en la Curazao, que es una de las marcas. La Curazao tiene más de 200 tiendas físicas y también tenemos una web que es lacurazao.com, un e-commerce, no un marketplace. Ahí solamente para contarles cuál es la diferencia. Un e-commerce es cuando el stock es propio. Nosotros compramos el stock y lo publicamos a través de una página digital. Y un marketplace es cuando el stock no es propio. ¿Me entienden? Es cuando somos un facilitador entre tienda y clientes finales. Bueno, entonces, en la Curazao comenzamos a construir, a diseñar esos blueprints y a comenzar a aplicar diseños de experiencia Phygitales. ¿Y cuáles son los resultados? Les doy un ejemplo. En las tiendas físicas, sobre todo en las tiendas de mall, comenzamos a poner mesas de los más vendidos de la Curazao.pe, ¿sí? Lo mejor del mundo digital en la tienda física. Entonces, eso lo pueden ver hasta hoy, e inclusive esas mesas generan un 20% de venta de la tienda, y sobre un stock que probablemente no esté en la tienda. O sea, la tienda tiene un stock de cerca de 800 SKU, la web puede tener hasta 20.000 SKUs, 30.000 SKUs, y el tener visibilidad de lo más vendido en la web, en la tienda física, es una experiencia digital. ¿Sí? Acá lo ven, ¿no? Lo más vendido, estas son las tiendas sobre todo de mall, de la Curazao de mall, las encuentran así. Formas de pago y formas de entrega, ¿ya? Una experiencia digital también es compras en web y pagas en tienda, que te ayuda a vencer un dolor de cliente que es la confiabilidad en los pagos, ¿sí? Miren, qué importante, experiencia digital. Entras y miras el producto por la web, compras por la web, pero como no estás seguro o tienes miedo, te doy la opción de pagar en tienda. De por sí, el 60% de nuestras transacciones digitales son con pago en tienda. Y sobre todo por el tipo de país en el que estamos, en que la gente no necesariamente es toda tarjeta viente. Hay mucha gente que maneja efectivo, prefieren ir a pagar en la tienda. Lockers. Yo les decía, de la compra web, la gente comienza comprando en la web y el 70% es retiro en tienda o retiro en lockers físico. Aquí no sé si se ve bien, pero esta es la tienda que está en Miraflores. Le llamamos flagship nosotros. En todas las tiendas encuentras un módulo que se llama kiosco. Este es el kiosco, que te amplía el surtido de la tienda. O sea, la tienda puede tener un surtido, como les digo, de 1000 SKUs, menos 800, y entras al kiosco y tienes 8000 SKUs o 10.000 o 20.000 SKUs de surtido de la web disponible para comprarlo ahí. Físicamente estás en la tienda, pero compras a través de la web con un surtido mucho más grande. Hoy, para darles una idea, del 100% de nuestras ventas, el 35% es una venta digital. Es bien alto. E inclusive, bueno, me faltó poner una foto ahí, tenemos lo que son, otra de las experiencias digitales son conectados, que es una fuerza de venta bastante grande, que van puerta por puerta, sobre todo en provincias, a vender con el celular, pero a vender sobre todo con ese kiosco que está disponible en la misma tienda física hacia los clientes, con un catálogo un poco más reducido. Otra de las experiencias digitales, por ejemplo, son compras en vivo, ¿no? Tú entras a la web o entras a YouTube, que son las ventas por streaming, y si hay un producto que en ese momento te gusta, llamas a Fonocompras, el medio a través del que se vende es la web, que es el kiosco, y te llega a tu casa por delivery o lo retiras en tienda. O lo puedes pagar en tienda o lo puedes pagar por tarjeta. Nuevamente, son experiencias digitales, compras en vivo. Y lo último que hemos lanzado en la Curazao que nos permite o nos ayuda a humanizar el e-commerce es el tequi. Lo bonito de esta historia es que nuevamente ya el cliente tiene mucho miedo de comprar digitalmente. Entonces hay el que compra presencial y el que compra digital no necesariamente es un cliente 100% digital. Pero una experiencia digital es ayudar al cliente o llevarlo casi de la mano, humanizando el e-commerce y poniendo a personas que te ayuden a navegar a través de la web. Eso es nuestro tequi. Nuestro tequi, tú entras, hoy pueden entrar a lacurazao.pe y lo que haces es que encuentras en el product page, en el catálogo de productos, o sea, cuando encuentras un producto y le dices, oye, de verdad me encantaría que alguien me ayude. Aprietas el botón en el product page y una persona te contesta en ese mismo momento, pero la ves face to face, ¿no? La ves y te ayuda a recorrer todo el camino en la web para ayudarte a darte la confianza suficiente de educarte a ser un cliente digital. En algún momento probablemente ya no lo necesites, pero hoy te ayuda, digamos, con la asesoría del producto, te ayuda con ver los tipos de entrega, si lo tienes disponible, cuál es el método de pago que más te ayuda a sentirte cómodo en tu compra digital, ¿no? Todos estos son ejemplos de experiencias digitales. Pero lo importante es reconocer que las experiencias digitales llegaron para quedarse y que son la oportunidad hoy de generar un diferencial a los clientes, de que tenga todos los medios, todos los canales, todos los momentos que lo hagan sentir más cómodos, y en algún momento serán 100% digitales. Pero hoy, digamos, lo más importante de las empresas es asegurar que los clientes tienen la mejor experiencia en cada uno de esos momentos de contacto. Algunos indicadores, les decía, bueno, hemos trabajado mucho lo que es el NPS, tenemos 80% de NPS en retiro en tienda. El 60% de los clientes retiraron en tienda entre 60 y 70%, ¿ya? Ese porcentaje puede bajar cuando hacemos delivery gratis, cuando ven las campañas que dicen compra y te entregamos con despacho a domicilio gratuito, hace que esos porcentajes bajen un poco, pero claro, tiene que ver con la gratuidad del servicio, ¿no? Y 20% de los clientes que fueron a retirar un producto compraron en tienda, que son parte de los indicadores que les enseñé un poco también de Estados Unidos, ¿no? El cliente valora hoy la libertad de elegir. Eso es bien importante. La libertad de elegir y nuevamente como empresa tener la posibilidad de disponibilizarle todos los canales, todos los medios, reconociendo que hay experiencias digitales. Pero finalmente lo más importante que hemos trabajado en el grupo, porque les acabo de decir, me fui básicamente al tema de diseño de experiencias, es que en el grupo hemos puesto al cliente y al colaborador en el centro, hemos cambiado nuestro propósito, y lo más importante es que hemos reconocido que nada de estas experiencias digitales serían posibles sin las personas, sin los colaboradores, sin las familias. Entonces, ¿cuál es nuestro propósito de valores? Y miren ya qué cambio de estrategia tan grande como organización hemos hecho, que desde el propósito estamos definiendo textualmente clientes y colaboradores. Nuestro propósito, cumplir los sueños de clientes y colaboradores con experiencias y soluciones innovadoras. Todo esto que les acabo de comentar fue resultado del framework de experiencia que trabajamos. Este es un framework que tiene al cliente y al colaborador en el centro. Siempre me gusta contarlo porque en realidad hoy cuando veo a las organizaciones veo hablando de experiencia cliente por un lado y experiencia colaborador por el otro. No, la verdad es que lo mejor es que nazca junto. Y en el grupo F hemos reconocido, bueno, hay un cohete que despega, pero dijimos, oye, en ese cohete no va el cliente colaborador, y ahorita se está subiendo el seller también, ¿no? Que es parte de juntos. Definimos una estrategia, identificamos cuáles son sus dolores y necesidades, medimos y mejoramos. Tenemos más de 10 momentos de verdad, medimos con NPS y medimos el NPS estratégico y el transaccional, de experiencias físicas, de experiencias digitales. Tenemos unas mesas de FX enfocadas en soluciones innovadoras para los dolores de cliente. Trabajamos mucho el tema de cultura y un modelo de gobierno regido a través de un comité estratégico, un comité de lanzamientos y ante crisis, el equipo de experiencia, digamos, es el responsable de asegurar que se resuelvan los problemas de lo más rápido posible. ¿Qué resultados hemos tenido después de todo este cambio de modelo? De reconocer que hay experiencias digitales, de poner al cliente colaborador, seller al centro de nuestras acciones y decisiones, de definir un framework, de trabajar esas experiencias. Bueno, el 40% de las ventas son digitales, hemos crecido en 20% la venta, tenemos NPS de 70% o mayores a 70%, en retiro de tienda hemos llegado hasta 80%, tenemos un 72% de NPS, un 96% de Great Place to Work. De por sí, estamos dentro de las 5 empresas Great Place to Work. Y somos una marca empleadora súper fortalecida. Nos van a justo conversar con Sebastián y nos van a ver muy activos en LinkedIn porque tenemos mucho sentido de orgullo con los logros que venimos haciendo. ¿Y cómo vivimos la experiencia? Bueno, hay todo un trabajo que hemos venido haciendo de hace algún tiempo. Siempre nos van a ver en las fotos así, con actitud F. ¿Qué significa actitud F? Actitud F significa pasión por el cliente y colaborador, transparencia y soluciones. ¿Sí? Miren, desde la posición corporal, desde la foto reconocemos nuestra pasión por cliente y colaborador. Tenemos la ruta del cliente feliz de las experiencias Phygitales, tenemos el app de cliente feliz, y bueno, no hablamos de NPS, sino hablamos de nuestra pasión es el servicio. Finalmente terminar ahí con los logros, un poco del grupo. Hemos sido nominados a EFI, Great Place to Work. Los mejores lugares para trabajar estamos en el puesto 5, ¿no? Como financiera efectiva también hemos logrado muchos reconocimientos, sobre todo porque somos el segundo bancarizador del Perú, ¿no? Y somos un grupo, sobre todo, 100% peruano, que es lo que más nos llena de orgullo, ¿no? Somos un grupo 100% peruano que hemos apostado por la experiencia del cliente, por la experiencia del colaborador y por la experiencia del seller también hoy. Pero sobre todo, somos una cultura enfocada en las personas, ¿ya? Y con esta lámina termino y dejo abierta preguntas. Lo dijo Richard Branson, bueno, y los que están en la esquina inferior derecha son los dueños del grupo F, que son Manuel y Ricardo. Los clientes no son lo primero son los empleados. Si cuidas de tus empleados, ellos cuidarán de tus clientes, ¿no? Todo lo que hemos logrado hasta hoy es resultado de las personas, de los colaboradores, de las familias que somos parte del grupo F. El haber reconocido que somos lo más importante hace que nuestros clientes tengan las mejores experiencias. Y ese es, bueno, espero no haber sido muy larga y quedo abierta a preguntas. Con un café.
Patricia, perfecto, todo un gusto tenerte. Wow, qué charla tan interesante este modo de charlas digitales. Wow. Bueno, empezamos con las preguntas. Justo tenemos una pregunta de Luciana. Ella nos dice, Patricia, ¿cómo pensaron la alineación de incentivos de las personas en sucursales que puede que les toque exhibir productos, pero que luego el cliente concreta la venta online? ¿Tienen algún modelo de atribución para esas experiencias?
Sí, o sea, la venta de la tienda no es solamente presencial. Eso es bien importante. Obvio, porque la comisión, el vendedor es vendedor, ¿no? Y el vendedor vende con la mejor experiencia. Eso también es bien importante. Pero cuando vende, todos los canales disponibles de la tienda son parte de su meta de ventas. O sea, venda con tienda física o venda con kiosco, que es la web en la tienda, es parte de su modelo de incentivos. Por eso es que les decía, no les puse ahí una pantalla, pero el kiosco es la web, sea la Curazao, sea F, o sea Juntos, donde el vendedor se loguea con su código. Entonces, como se loguea con su código, es una venta cuya comisión le suma, ¿no?
Perfecto, Patricia. Bueno, también tenemos la siguiente pregunta. Nos escriben, ¿qué tan difícil ha sido la transformación e integración del Juntos al grupo F? Qué pregunta tan interesante.
Ah, ha sido divertida. Nosotros hemos comenzado juntos.com. Uy, la batería se está... Dame 5 segundos. Juntos.com, el mensaje de la batería fue mío, Sandra, ¿no?
Sí, no se escuchó. Debe ser tuyo, sí.
Sí, ya, espérame. La batería se está agotando, pero dame 5 segundos porque yo pensé que lo había conectado.
No te preocupes, los demás pueden ir haciendo preguntas en el chat de Q&A o en el chat de este webinar.
A ver, ya. ¿Qué tan difícil fue la integración? Fue divertida. Nosotros hemos comenzado el 22 de febrero del 2022. Tenemos casi 6 meses dentro del grupo. Y no ha sido fácil porque como juntos somos una startup, ¿no? Somos una unidad a mí me gusta decir que somos una empresa digital, ¿ya? Y no es que me guste, o sea, somos una empresa digital y somos una startup que se une al grupo, pero digamos, un grupo ya consolidado, también 100% peruano, que compartimos valores y el foco en las personas, pero que tiene unos procesos un poco más organizados o un poco más, depende de la perspectiva, puede ser a veces un poco más burocrático para una startup. Entonces, digamos, lo más difícil de esta integración fue el entender o el conocer los procesos para las aprobaciones, para las autorizaciones, para avanzar. Pero ahí, digamos, creo que mi rol principal fue fungir de esa bisagra que ayude que estos dos mundos, una startup o un grupo ya conformado, pueda trabajar en equipo de la mejor manera, ¿no? Y avanzar.
Perfecto, Patricia. También tenemos otra pregunta de Andrés. Dice, ¿qué tips recomiendas en base a tu experiencia en cómo comenzar a formar una cultura centrada en las personas para una empresa que está enfocada a netamente vender?
A ver, ahí hay cambios tan importantes desde el concepto del momento que tú dices, oye, la empresa está centrada solo en vender. Cuando yo llegué al grupo F en julio del 2020, de por sí no tengo mucho tiempo, en julio del 2020, sí, en plena pandemia. Entonces, cuando yo llegué al grupo, y solamente para darles ahí el contexto, cuando el grupo decía buenas ventas, se cerraba todas las reuniones diciendo buenas ventas. Un error muy grande que cometemos los expertos o los apasionados por el tema de experiencia cliente es tratar de competir con las ventas. Y eso es un error garrafal, ¿ya? Entonces, yo no entré a competir con las ventas, yo entré a tratar de hacer ver a la organización que se logran buenas ventas con la mejor experiencia. De por sí, hoy la frase en la organización ya no dice buenas ventas, dicen buenas ventas con la mejor experiencia. ¿Por qué? Porque la mejor experiencia te genera recomendación, te genera recompra y te genera recuerdo, recomendación y sobre todo recompra. Y la recompra significa que son más ventas. No tiene por qué estar desligado. Entonces, a tu pregunta o a la pregunta que hacen Sandra, lo principal es asegurar ese cambio de mindset. Cuando estás enfocado en ventas, también estás enfocado en experiencia. Es buenas ventas con la mejor experiencia, ¿no?
Perfecto, Patricia. Acá tenemos la siguiente pregunta que dice, también nos escribe Patricia, ¿qué controles tienen en cuenta para validar el feedback de las encuestas sea lo más fiel a la experiencia del cliente? En algunas empresas hay empleados que influencian en los clientes sugiriendo una calificación alta, ya que lo tienen como parte de incentivo. Muchas gracias por la presentación, estuvo excelente.
Dale. Nosotros tenemos tenemos una herramienta, un app. No es ninguna, cuando recién llegué coticé uy, se me fueron los nombres es una app diseñada in-house, ¿ah? O sea, nosotros hacemos las encuestas por SurveyMonkey y esas las hacemos en un app que está conectada a través de un API y a cada gerente de tienda le llega en línea o máximo al día siguiente de respondida a la encuesta el feedback de los clientes por NPS. Tenemos NPS por cada tienda, por cada canal, por cada momento. Entonces, un cliente hace una compra en tienda física y responde a la encuesta, al día siguiente le llega al gerente. Se hace una compra virtual, pero con retiro en tienda, al día siguiente le llega al gerente de tienda. Entonces, le llega el feedback a través del app y el gerente de tienda o el vendedor lo que hace en ese momento es llama al cliente y gestiona la insatisfacción, ¿no? Básicamente no hay mayor ciencia que esa, es escuchar la voz de los clientes y sobre todo los dolores, pero hacer a cada canal consciente de esa voz de cliente, ¿no? Que le ayuda a mejorar.
Perfecto, Patricia. También tenemos otra pregunta de Claudia López. Ella nos dice, a lo interno, nos dejaste claro cómo lograr el cambio del mindset interno de los equipos comerciales, pero ¿cómo ha logrado Grupo F alinear el personal de los sellers que son externos, si entiendo bien, con la cultura de CX?
Bueno, eso es algo que estamos trabajando todavía. Una forma, recordar que el seller ingresa a nuestro framework desde este año que adquirimos juntos. ¿Cómo lo hacemos parte de? Hay una métrica que hemos comenzado a trabajar con los sellers, un programa que se llama Mi Tienda Deflección, donde hemos dicho 4 criterios básicos. Como tienda, para asegurar que tienes la mejor venta y que vas a poder incrementar tus ventas, tenemos un rating, nivel de servicio, me estoy yendo a la parte operativa, nivel de servicio, porcentaje de cancelaciones, porcentaje de devoluciones y reclamos sobre pedidos. Son 4 indicadores que te permiten hacerle ver al seller qué nivel de experiencia está entregando para asegurar generar más o menos ventas, ¿no? Espero haber respondido esa pregunta.
Sí, claro que sí. Bueno, Patricia, muchísimas gracias por tu presentación. La verdad que el tiempo se ha quedado corto con todas las preguntas de la gente. Ha sido súper interesante conocer el caso de Grupo F y también cómo ha crecido y actualmente está, bueno, esos números que en verdad todos nos hemos quedado impactados gracias a esta cultura de Access y obviamente gracias a tu performance. Felicitaciones, Patricia, y nada, estamos a gusto que nos puedas acompañar en un próximo Xperienzium. Que tengas gran día. Mil
Gracias,
gracias.
Sandra. Un abrazo. Muchísimas gracias a
No,
todos y
a
todas.
ti.
Chao.
Cuídense, nos vemos. Bueno, ahora sí, para seguir con el evento de Xperienzium, le voy a presentar, bueno, antes nos vamos a una pequeña tanda publicitaria, pero ustedes no se vayan a ir, que nosotros todavía tenemos mucho para ustedes. Así que vamos a comentarles lo que tenemos próximamente para el evento. No se vayan a ir. Aún quedan 2 speakers de lujo. Acabamos de tener Patricia, tuvimos sección de Q&A. Y bueno, ahora les quería recordar que estamos sorteando 3 ebooks. Sí, 3 ebooks porque sortear uno en verdad que quedó corto con la cantidad de gente que nos estaba escribiendo, así que hemos llegado a la conclusión, ok, mejor 3 para que puedan haber más ganadores. ¿Qué libros van a ser? Estos 3 que les había comentado, A Life and Well, Universidad de Disney y Driving to the Light. Ya saben que estas lecturas están en español para ustedes. ¿Saben cómo pueden participar? Nos escriben cómo el CX está impactando en tu vida. Dejan los links en el evento, en nuestras redes sociales. Tienen que seguirnos en LinkedIn e Instagram, etiquetarnos y listo. Así de fácil ustedes van a poder entrar al sorteo. Ya saben que la próxima semana les vamos a estar comentando sobre el sorteo. También les quiero comentar sobre el nuevo podcast que ya lo anunciamos, pero todavía no se lanza el 18 de octubre. Se llama Return to Wow, así que ya saben que el podcast va a estar listo para que ustedes lo puedan escuchar el 18 de octubre. Ahora sí estamos listos. Avísenme si ya estamos listos para presentar a nuestra siguiente persona. Ok, me comentan que ya se encuentra con nosotros. Ahora sí, la próxima persona que vamos a presentar es Rick Denton. Para las personas que se están conectando, nosotros estamos teniendo un traductor para que puedan entenderlo en su idioma, en el idioma doblado al español. Hola Rick, ¿cómo estás? Bienvenido a Xperienzium. ¿Qué tal?
I'm doing well. It is a pleasure to be here.
Perfecto, también es un placer tenerte con nosotros. Bueno, voy a contar un poquito la historia de Rick para que ustedes lo conozcan. Él es managing principal de EX4CX, tiene más de 20 años automotriz en diferentes compañías de USA. Asimismo, se ha especializado en enfoque de voz total del cliente. Rick también presenta el podcast CX Passport, a través del cual cree que las mejores comidas se sirven fuera y requieren un pasaporte. Así es. Rick, bienvenido a Experiencia.
Thank you, Sandra. It is an absolute delight to be here. I am excited to be a part of this and am so thankful to have been invited to be a part of this session. I just want to start by asking, who loves old restaurants that have been run by a family for generations, that have great food? It's a small restaurant. It's cozy. It's a great experience. Who loves those kind of restaurants? We'll talk about that later. I am Rick Denton, and thank you, Sandra, for introducing me. I do work for EX4CX, which is Execution for Customer Experience, where I help companies create actual tangible business value from their voice of the customer programs. There was mention of the podcast CX Passport. It actually was a former guest, Sebastian Munar, back in May of 2021, who invited me to be a part of the session today. So thank you to Sebastian for this opportunity. I'm very thankful to be here. I also want to mention we do have question and answer planned for the end of this session, and I look forward to hearing your questions and having a conversation, really, because what I hope today is, while there is a presentation, I hope that we can have a conversation. I want to tell you a little story first. So I live in Dallas, Tejas, USA. And it's a region that is known for our Tex-Mex restaurants. And there is a little restaurant called Mia's that my daughter and I are particularly fans of. Great food, old place. I live about 30 miles from it, so it takes a bit of a journey to get there. But it's the kind of place that has been there for generations. It is a place that is cozy. It's a place that is exciting is the wrong word. It's a place that is just comfortable to be in, where you know you're going to get a great meal. And this is what Mia's looks like. It's an old place. It is a place that, I'm not exaggerating when I say that you could be sitting at a table next to a former president of the United States. For real, he lives in the area, and so he goes there. At the next table, you might see a family with their children there enjoying a family meal. At the next table, you might see Jerry Jones, who's the owner of the Dallas Cowboys U.S. football team, next to a table of the construction workers that were repairing the road right outside. It is a restaurant that has been there for generations, and it is cozy, and it is a phenomenal customer experience. So my daughter and I one time decided, let's go down to Mia's. 30-minute miles, we'll go ahead and make that drive. And so we get in the car and we head down and we talk excitedly about, for us, the tortillas, the queso, the tacos, the enchiladas, all the things that are great about Tex-Mex food. And as we got to the road where Mia's was, it wasn't there anymore. And we kept driving around and we kept looking for Mia's and we wondered, wait, what happened to our Mia's? What happened? Something has changed. Well, then we see this, and we see this big, yellow, pastel, purple, large restaurant. We thought, could that be Mia's? Is that really the same place? This looks like a generic chain restaurant that was designed by some corporation out of New York City. Could this really be our Mia's? But we'd already made the 30-mile trip, so we thought, yeah, let's go ahead and head down there. Let's go inside. Let's just see what it's like. I'm happy to tell you that when we walked inside, even though we thought everything had changed about this place by looking at it, the reality is some things hadn't changed. The fundamentals had not changed. It was still great food. It was still great service. It was still a place where anyone of any status could be comfortable and fed with a great meal. When we think about the pandemic, when we think about 2020, when we think about that year, we hear so many people say, man, the pandemic, that's the event where everything changed. We think about how much has gone into weddings. Like, think about all the things that have changed. Weddings were done over Zoom. Weddings, the most intimate, romantic moment to be shared with your friends and family, taking place over a computer screen. My son graduated in 2020 from high school, and his graduation was completely different. There were graduations that were held drive-through graduations where you got out of your car, had a quick picture with your principal, and then got back in the car. And then something that is we're all experiencing, even this webinar today is an example of it, that we work from anywhere, that we work and we have the opportunity to work in any place, work from home. But what I'm here to tell you today is that while 2020, while the pandemic, while things changed significantly, not everything changed. The customer experience and the expectations of your customers still are intact today. Don't let an excuse of the pandemic or anything like that stand in the way of realizing your customers are still expecting great experience. They are still expecting great service, great product, great pricing. All of the things that go into customer experience, your customers still expect. So that while 2020 was the year where people say everything changed, I tell you that not everything changed. And if you think back to my story about Mia's the restaurant, while everything seems like it changed, while everything on the outside, even the way it was structured, the parking, everything felt different, the reality is the expectation that we had as diners, that my daughter and I had as diners, hadn't changed, and Mia's was able to continue to deliver on that. And what I want to talk to you about today is that there are 3 key principles of customer experience that have not changed. And they are, you need to go after a total voice of the customer. We'll explain what that is here in a little bit. I also want to talk to you about how it is still just as important today, maybe even more so, to rely on your front line. And then the last thing, it was true before the pandemic. It's especially true after it. And it's true today. The customer does not care about your excuses. We'll talk a lot about that, but the customer does not care about your excuses. I want to tell you one thing today. If you hear nothing, like if you stop listening right now, I just want you to hear one sentence. And that is, when it comes to voice of the customer, you need to stop, survey, and score and start, listen, and act. Again, I'll say it: stop, survey, and score and start, listen, and act. And what do I mean by that? What does a true total voice of the customer mean when we're considering stop, survey, and score and start, listen, and act? I want you to think of voice of the customer across 9 dimensions. And we don't have time today to go into great detail of these, But so many people think of voice of the customer as I send out a survey and I get a score back. But that's not what a total voice of the customer approach is. That's not what your customers' expectations before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and after the pandemic, those expectations have not changed, that they expect you to have a total voice of the customer approach. So what do I mean by survey and score? That a lot of companies will do this, right? And some of you may be in companies that are still experimenting with this. You send out your survey, and then you get your report back at the end of the month, and you're in this conference room. Imagine you're in this conference room and you're looking up at the screen and the survey went up. Yay, we applaud. We get real happy about that. Oh no, the survey went down. We shed a little tear, but nothing takes place. That means nothing to your customer, that survey and score. Listen and act is doing these 9 dimensions to be able to do something with the customer and what they have shared their voice with you and what they want you to know. So what do I mean by listen? Let's go through these pretty quickly here. What do I mean by listen? Listen, I want you to look at collect, analyze, and global. And collect, what I mean by that is it's not just a survey. Your customer speaks to you in many, many different ways. Your customer isn't just responding to the email or the text survey that you're out. Your customer is talking to your front line. Your customer is in the store talking with the employees inside the store. They're in your restaurant. They're buying your products or they're not buying your products. They're interacting with you on social media. They are speaking to you, and I use that word loosely, speaking to you in many, many different ways. I'll give you an example of beyond even speaking. What's the customer behavior telling you? So I had the opportunity to have on the podcast Katie Miller. She is the head of fan experience for the NBA, the professional basketball league in the US, for the Orlando Magic. And she told me a story that they did talk to their customers, their season ticket holders. And every single one of the season ticket holders said, I want healthier food options in the arena. I want to see salads. I want to see sparkling water. I want to see grilled items. Well, you know what the customers ordered when they went to the concessions when they were at the actual games? They still got the fried chicken. They still ordered plenty of beer. They still ordered plenty of nachos. The customers may have said with their voice they wanted one thing, but their behavior showed a different thing. And that's why it's so important when I say collect as part of a total voice of the customer program, to collect across the entire spectrum of what your customer and where your customer and how your customer speaks to you, because sometimes they may say one thing, but actually do another. Analyze. That's a vital second step in a total voice of the customer approach. Because it doesn't matter if you collect all this great information, if you can't distill it into a meaningful theme, that you can't distill it into what are the customers asking about, talking about, what are the main themes, as opposed to just the loudest customer. There's a risk in going after just who complains the loudest or who celebrates the loudest. Now, this is an area where tools become a big factor here. Now, I'm not going to create a tool discussion here. I'm not going to talk about systems or vendors, because you can do this with Excel. You can still do this in a scrappy and basic fashion. But this is an area where tools absolutely help so that you can take all that great input, synthesize it together, and then understand what the themes are. Last part of listen is the global aspect of it. And why do I talk about global? Especially in an audience like I'm talking to today, where we're talking across borders. I actually have a story from a company that I consulted for where they were a global hospitality brand. And they were sending out surveys to their Chinese customers in email using English. Well, I can tell you what the response rate was. It was not good. And that's because the Chinese customer, one, would prefer to be communicated to in their own language. And second, email was not a preferred method of communication, whereas SMS, Weibo, the WeChat, and the others are the areas where they wanted to be communicated with. And so when I say global, I mean be thoughtful about your entire customer base. If it's solely inside the country, it still is something you need to keep in mind, because a global customer, even inside of your customer, could be a wide spectrum of your customer personas. And being able to listen to all of your customers in a global sense is a key part of total voice of the customer. Now, I mentioned listen and act. Those are the 3 elements of listen: collect, analyze, and global. But when I talk about act, there's 2 main themes inside of act. So let's start with talking about the closed loop feedback. It's there in the middle, bottom, and the middle. And there are 2 versions of closed loop feedback that I want to point out to you, and that is restore relationships. That's the external closed loop feedback. That's solving a concern for one customer. They've called in, they have a concern, they have a complaint, something went wrong. Notice what I didn't say, though. I didn't say fix issues. And I have stolen this, and I admit stealing it from Disney. Disney does not fix issues. They focus on restoring relationships. It would be really easy to fix issues at Disney. Oh, somebody didn't have a good experience on a ride. Give them a pass to the front of the ride. Oh, something was wrong with their hotel room. Give them an upgrade. Something. It's real easy to do that. But that's not the same as restoring relationships. Restoring relationship goes deeper. It gets to understanding the customer, listening to the customer, understanding the root of what their concern or complaint is, and then working to build their relationship with your brand and restore that relationship with your brand. And we've seen it in many cases. I've experienced it myself. If a brand has disappointed me, but they restore my relationship, sometimes I feel better about that brand than had they just given me a good experience straight along. Now, I'm not recommending that you purposely give bad experiences to your customers so that you can then restore relationships. But when it does happen, restore those relationships and you'll find an amazing advocate for your brand. Improve. The second element of ACT, ICLF, internal closed loop feedback. What do I mean by improve? Now, it can be really easy to think, okay, great, we heard this customer complaint. Let's go fix that process, that sort of thing. But do you have a disciplined approach to solving customer concerns at the theme level? So if a wide percentage of your customers are expressing that they're having concerns with how they interact with the shopping cart on your website, or if a wide percentage of your customers are upset with the long hold times when they call in, or pick whatever theme it might be, do you have a disciplined approach on how you improve that? Do you have a disciplined approach on bringing in that input from the customer and then fixing it as part of a closed loop feedback? There's a lot that goes into what that means, but the element that I'd want to say to you is but what is your disciplined approach to that? If you have a disciplined approach, then you're set there. If you don't, this is the time to focus on what does that really mean? Now, if I stopped there, that would be what a lot of folks would say would be listen and act. That's very common to hear that's listen. I've collected my information. I've analyzed it in a global way. I've done closed loop feedback. I've acted. I'm done with the customer. But there's an element of total VOC that often gets overlooked. And it's there on the right. Inspire, celebrate, coach. It's the employee engagement aspect of this. I caught the tail end of the former speaker and saw how she was focused on, employee experience, the Richard Branson quote, right? That focus on your employee experience first, and that'll deliver a great customer experience. In a total voice of the customer approach, it's just as vital to do that. And so what do I mean by inspire, celebrate, and coach? And I could spend hours on this because this stuff gets me really excited, but I won't for everybody's sake here. Inspire. What are the customer stories that you are consciously collecting to be able to inspire your company? I used to work for a company that did home equity products. I don't know if you can imagine a less emotional product than home equity. It's a loan. It's a mortgage. It is a banking product. Sounds very sterile, right? I'm not exaggerating when I say that I have shed tears during a town hall at that company when they brought in customer stories telling all of us the impact of a customer's home equity product on their life. When you hear that a customer was able to afford an experimental cancer treatment because of their home equity product, when you hear that a customer was able to adopt a 14-year-old girl into their family because of their home equity product, suddenly you realize this isn't just business. This is emotion. This is right here at the heart. And a total voice of the customer approach takes those customer stories that you've heard from your listening and uses those to inspire. There are many ways that you can inspire, and I'll have some guides that can kind of show you how that might, some ideas that can help you build that inspire into your own company. But are you taking that voice of the customer and using it to inspire? Now, the second thing is celebrate. And you might think, well, wait, isn't that the same? Celebrate is when you're talking about the individual, the team. So if you have a good listening approach in your total voice, the customer, then you have a way to know if one of your employees has truly done something fantastic for a customer, that a customer was particularly happy with that employee and did something that was special or even normal, but just great customer experience. Well, if so, are you celebrating them? What does that look like for you? Is that a handwritten note? Is it a balloon tied to the back of the chair? Is it going to a stand-up meeting with that group and celebrating them in some way? Whatever that is, take the time to do the individual celebration of the employees and the teams that have delivered great customer experience. And the way to know that they've done that is by having a great listen approach up front, so that you've collected those stories. And then lastly, coach. And I know this to be true in the US, but the word coach has gotten a bit of a negative associated with it, that I'm going to coach you. And it's got very negative, but I want you to think instead of a coach as the best athletic coach that you can think out there. Who's a great football coach? And the great coaches are the ones that are able to elevate what their players are doing well and amplify what their players are doing well, and then identify where players are not doing as well and helping them change and course correct in that. And your voice of the customer is one of the most valuable tools to be able to help with that coaching. It means a lot more to an employee if they hear from the customer saying, this is an area that was great, please keep doing that. Or, hey, this fell short, let's change that, as opposed to just the manager, the team lead saying it on their own observations, but using the actual customer's voice, the calls, the emails, the social media posts. All of those can be used to coach. That's listen and act. But there's one more box there, and it is the one on the bottom right, and it is bottom left. And it's the idea of taking all of this and making it foundational. Customer-centered foundation across the organization. Amazon is well known for a story that is legendary, and that is that in every meeting, they have an empty chair, and that empty chair is to represent the customer. Now, I'm not recommending that your company do that, but the intent behind that is the customer is a part of all of your decisions. And so how do you take that voice of the customer approach, that total voice of the customer approach, and bring that into your company, whatever it looks like? Is it playing calls? Is it putting verbatims, customer responses to surveys on screens inside your company? Is it making sure that social media posts or other elements of the customer are there inside of your business decisions, not just your customer decisions? Notice I did say that, your business decisions. And so that's total VOC in its core. And that is one of the three elements that I mentioned have not changed. While there's a lot of detail there, your customer is still saying, I want you to listen to me, and I want you to act upon what you hear from me. I want to talk about one other area. No, I want to talk about the second element of what hasn't changed in customer experience, and that is your frontline knows your customer better than you do. I'll say it again. Your frontline knows your customer better than you do. The people who are on the phones, the people who are in the stores, the people who are actually interacting with the customer, they are the ones that know your customer better than you do in a conference room, in a boardroom, inside a headquarters. They do. And so that group is often ignored. It's sometimes diminished. It sometimes doesn't get the same budget. It sometimes doesn't get the same focus, but they are closer to your customer than anyone. And what is important about that front line? I want to suggest that there's two things that can be done, two waves to be done with your frontline that recognize that they know your customer better than you do. And that is when your frontline is interacting with your customer, do you have a method in place for your frontline to capture the customer feedback? And I want to tell you two stories. So where I live, there are two airlines that are headquartered in my hometown. And I'm not going to name names. Those who might know the airlines will easily know which one I mean by the different stories. But I've had the opportunity to fly both airlines and fly them often. And because I'm a customer experience guy, of course, when I'm on a call and if there's some issue that I need resolved, I usually will say to the agent, hey, is there a way for you to capture my feedback? Is there any way for you to be able to collect what I'm saying and give it back to your company so that whatever broke won't break again. And I actually admire the honesty of the agent for one of the airlines that I talked to. And that agent said, no, they don't give us that. I don't have the ability to capture that. She wasn't rude about it or anything, just very factual. And she said, but you can send an email into our customer service group and maybe they'll pay attention to it. And it was obvious to me that that company did not care about their front line. And it doesn't surprise me knowing what the customer experience is like with that airline. Well, another airline, I actually, same thing, call in, something's gone wrong. And I call in and I say, can you log this? Is there a way for you to capture this? And I mean, you could hear it's over the phone, but I could hear almost their eyes go wide and that, yes, I can do that right here. And you could hear their fingers furiously typing on the keyboard. All right, tell me what your issue is. Here's what happens. It goes to this team. They knew exactly which team it went to. The team's going to look at it. And she said, hey, you're probably not going to hear a response back, but I can assure you that the team takes this input, they take it seriously, and they do something with that. Well, that meant something to me as a customer. And I can tell you that the customer experience on that airline is significantly better than the other airline. Well, maybe it's because that second airline cares about their front line and recognizes that the front line is where one can listen to the customer in a fantastic way. Well, that's great, right? If you collect all that information, that's fantastic. But that's only half of the equation. When you're sitting there in your conference room and you're brainstorming solutions, have you brought your front line into that conversation? What would it look like if you actually pulled people from the stores, from the phones, from whatever your front line is, into that brainstorming session? You may think it's a phenomenal idea, and then your front line can say, hey, but here's why that would work, or here's a way that we could improve that to make it work even better. Well, that's a key element of that. So have you brought them into that? But even beyond that, let's say that they've been a part of the solution, or maybe you haven't had them a part of the solution. It's important to feed that information back to the front line. Nothing will stop your source of information faster than if the source of your information feels like they're being ignored. And a great way to make sure they don't feel ignored is by passing back to the front line. Here's what we heard you tell us. Here's what we heard you say. Here's what we heard you tell us about the customer. Here's what we heard from you. And here's what we're doing about it, so that they're not ambushed by your greatest, newest customer experience innovation, but rather the front line becomes a partner in the rollout of that, and the delivery of that experience and the expression of that experience becomes something that is a delight because your front line is embedded and excited about that. There's a podcast guest that his episode will release next Tuesday. And he mentioned exactly that he said one of the things that he loves being a part of a customer success member, so frontline for his company, is that when they capture that input, they're looking for the stories behind it. It's those stories that really amplify the facts, because a survey might tell you facts, customer behavior might tell you facts, but the front line can give you the stories. They can give you what actually is happening and is in the heart of the customer. So why does that matter? Why does it matter to work with a frontline? Well, one of the things is, and we talked about that with just total voice of the customer, right? In general, is employee engagement. If a frontline feels like they're being involved, if they feel like they're being heard, well, then they're more engaged. They're more excited to be a part of the company. If the story that I told earlier, let's say that the agent, the loan processor that was working with the family that was able to afford experimental cancer treatment because of the home equity product. What if that agent then saw that story being retold there at the town hall? How special would that feel to that agent? I was heard. My story was shared. My customer story was shared. It builds that employee engagement. And the second part of it is it builds empathy. It builds empathy in the front line, but it also builds empathy inside the headquarters that is not sitting at the front line. If we're hearing and actively understanding what our front line is experiencing, if we're understanding what our front line is telling us that the customer is experiencing, then suddenly we can have a lot greater empathy of what that frontline person is experiencing. We can understand, we can walk in their shoes. But we can't walk in their shoes if we're not willing to listen to them and their story. And so that active and disciplined collection of frontline input helps build that empathy. And the last one I want to talk about when it comes to your frontline knows your customer better than you do, it breaks barriers. And I want to tell a little story here. And there's some emotion in this, but back to the home equity days as well. We've got a lot of stories from there. But we were doing a call listening session and just listening to calls. And it went a little like this. So allow me to do a little bit of a small play here. Customer calls, customer speaking. Hey, agent, I'm really sorry. I know that you told me to get those documents in by last Friday. I had them all queued up. I really meant to do that. But on Thursday, my uncle died, and I was really close to my uncle. And I was so overwhelmed by grief. I didn't know what to do. I didn't even think about this home equity thing. I just completely forgot about it. And I know that you've said I had to put that in by Friday, but or the loan would go away. But I'm just really sorry. With my uncle passing, I just was so sad. Okay, well, if you can get your documents in by next Friday, that'll be great. All of us listening to the call just gasped. How could that agent have heard that story and had no emotion, no connection, no acknowledgement of the grief that this person was feeling? Just went straight to, great, get us the documents by next Friday and you'll be fine. We gasped. And here's the thing behind that. We also knew this agent, and the agent was one that was well known for great experience. It shocked us. And so we had a conversation with her saying, hey, what happened? You played it for, why did this person's grieving? Why didn't you say something? And the agent looked at us and said, but y'all told me I had to be professional. Light bulb goes off in all of our leaders' heads. And we realize we have failed our agents by training them to be professional, but not explaining that professional can also be emotional. It can be warm. It can be connecting. It can have heart. Now, thankfully, this was years ago, and that has been completely corrected since. But this agent, by listening to the stories that we heard, by having a conversation with the agent, we were able to break that barrier of professionalism. And the agent was willing to let us tell her story across the company and be able to share that and lead that with others so that they would know that it is absolutely inside of the bounds of professionalism to be human. And we broke down that barrier. I mentioned this as the third option or third element of the customer and how customer experience has not changed. The customer does not care about your excuses. Now, when I started this talk a couple of years ago, right, 2020 and all of that, I had the phrase, the customer does not care about your COVID excuses. And what I'm sad to say is that is still a relevant phrase for me, that I am still able to say the customer doesn't care about your COVID excuses. But I can also say this, the customer doesn't care about any of your excuses. So when a customer calls in and hears, due to coronavirus concerns, there may be higher call volume and longer wait times in our call center. We apologize for any inconvenience. You're done. You don't have the opportunity to ask for or apologize for any inconvenience at this point. Customers don't care. Now, hear me out here. I don't want to diminish the fact that these are real issues. Even 2 years after the pandemic, it is still real. We are still struggling to hire enough talent inside of our contact centers, inside of our restaurants, inside of our retail stores, inside of our companies for roles. All of that's true. It doesn't matter. The customer does not care. So it really doesn't matter. Due to insert reason here, we're experiencing high call volumes. Your customer doesn't care. They just don't. In fact, I once wrote on LinkedIn that I think we should eliminate the phrase due to in all of our customer facing communications, because the customer doesn't care why anything is due to. All they care about is that you've solved whatever concern or need that they have at that time. So you know what a customer hears when they hear due to coronavirus concerns, due to this excuse, due to that excuse? All they hear is you don't care about me. Do you want to be the brand where the customer hears, you don't care about me? No, you want to be the brand that those customers are leaving in flocks to go spend their money with the brands that have solved for these concerns, that they have presented options to be able to give a customer what they need, when they need it, in the method that they need it. Those are the brands that a customer has flocked to, because it is amazing to see the amount of spending shift that has taken place from companies that are still using excuses and thinking that the customer will be forgiving. Well, you know, the customer may have been forgiving for a little bit. They are not forgiving anymore. So what does that mean? Why does this matter? Well, it matters because things will get better, right? And they already have from a pandemic perspective, but even as we enter into what may be a recessionary period, even if that happens, things will get better. So what you see on the screen here is just it's a graph that is an indicator. I could have picked any number of indicators, but I just want you to look at the crises that have been experienced over the last 20 years and what those have done. And if after each crisis, you see, for the most part, you see a small decline. Sometimes you don't even see a decline at all. But using international travelers as just one simple business and economic indicator, overall, the graph is going up. This is an easy one to see, that it continues to grow. And so what does that mean? It means that no matter what the crisis is, whether it's a pandemic in the past, whether it's a recession of the future, that's the time to focus on how are you listening to your customers and improving customer experience. Because things will get better. No matter what the trough is, things will get better. So what do I want to leave you with today? What are the actions that I would hope that you can take forward? One, just start. Build your ability to listen and act. If you're sitting today in a survey and score environment, move forward, move into listen and act. And I realize that not everyone will be able to be at step 100 of that journey, but wherever you are, take the next step. If that means adding another customer listening post. So if you only did surveys before, how are you talking to your front line? If you only did email, have you thought about your social media reviews? What does that look like? Whatever that ability to listen, take that next step and then act. What can you do to improve the closed loop feedback elements, both the external restore relationships or the internal improving of your company? What are you doing to improve the act? And then some of the easiest ones are, what are you doing to inspire, celebrate, and coach? Take that next step, grow into that element of act. Find that next step with listen and act. And then the second thing is check your connection with your front line. What does that look like? And you know, one of the best ways to check your connection with the front line? Ask them. Go out and sit with, talk to, be near, live with, go and experience beside your front line. Check that connection. Get out there and see what your front line has to say to you about what they think the connection is back with the headquarters, back with the customer experience team, back with the operational team. What does that look like? Check in with them. Build that two-way process, taking information, but then involving them in development and then feeding the information back. And just simply this, don't waste this moment to know who your customer is and build the best experience. This is true in bad times. It's true in good times. That bullet is true regardless. Don't ever waste this moment to know your customer and build the best experience. And a little bonus one, you can see where you stand. If you'd like to, you've seen the link here kind of flowing through the pages here. Download the free Total Voice of the Customer Assessment at totalvoc.com. It's an opportunity to just assess, hey, this is where I stand. Let me see where I stand on an overall journey. I want to close with one, just being so thankful for this opportunity. I do want to say it is the pandemic. It's the event where everything, nope, it's the event where not everything changed. I'd love to continue a conversation with any or all of you. Certainly, I've mentioned the Total VOC. Here's a QR code that's available for you to have a look at. If you want to listen to the podcast, hey, go listen to Sebastian's episode. He was great a year or so ago. You got that scan there. And then if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, reach out, connect, there's a QR code for you as well. I am particularly eager for this next slide, and that is Q&A. So I'm looking forward to that. I hope this was helpful to you, but I'm particularly eager to learn from you and have a conversation over these next few minutes. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Rick, muchísimas gracias a ti por toda la explicación. Wow, qué tal presentación de lujo para todos nosotros ha sido el día de hoy. Bueno, entonces pasamos a la sección de Q&A, ¿te parece? Ahí tenemos algunas preguntas. Luciana te pregunta, ¿podrías darnos algunos tips de cómo recuperar la relación después de haber fallado con algún cliente?
Would love to. I love this question because it's a question that doesn't really have an answer. How's that for being sneaky? But the first thing that I would tell you is, what is the first thing that a customer wants when they call with a concern? The first thing a customer wants is to be heard. And so the first step of restoring a relationship is listening. And I know I've said the word listen a lot because it's important to me and what I sincerely believe when it comes to voice of the customer. But it is that act of listening to them, acknowledging them, not fighting them. And sometimes it's not even about seeking clarification, just listen to them. That is the first step in restoring the relationship, because then you can understand what the root cause is inside of their concern. I'm going to try to say this story really briefly. And my restore relationship experience with Disney came when my daughter was, oh gosh, I'm going to get this wrong, but like 7 or 8 years old. So younger, right? So she's a 17-year-old now. And there was a particular ride experience that disappointed us, and it broke down and we weren't able to do it. And it was our last day or next to last day. And so we went, and I'm a customer experience guy. So I went into their guest relations and said, hey, I just want to let you know this kind of disappointed. My daughter was with us. And the person there didn't actually look at me. He heard the story. He went out from outside of the desk. I can't do this visually, but he got on his knees and looked my daughter in the eye and said, who's your favorite Disney character? I didn't ask about a Disney character. What's this guy talking about? And he says, who's your favorite Disney character? My daughter answered the question. He went back and got a tiny little plush toy and handed that to my daughter of that character and said, I hope you enjoy this. And then he looked at me and said, hey, here's some passes to go to the front of the line so you can catch that before you got to go catch your flight this afternoon. That's restore relationships. Fix issues would have been, here's some passes, go to the front of the line. Hope you have a great day. Bye. Love Disney. But instead, they looked to what the connection was. And it was that my daughter was disappointed with her Disney experience. How can he restore that relationship? By finding what her connectivity point to the brand, to Disney was. And in his mind and for her mind, it was her favorite Disney character. So there's one example. That doesn't work for every company, but it starts with listening.
Perfecto, Rick. Pasamos a la siguiente pregunta. Shirley nos pregunta, me encantó la charla, Rick, una pregunta, ¿qué buena práctica nos recomiendas para insertar la retroalimentación con nuestras primeras líneas?
The first thing I'd say is just have a simple way to collect it. And I mean this really basic. Since I don't know your company and the size of your company, I was actually just talking to, by the way, someone who's a really good follow on Twitter is Jeremy Watkin, and he has a CX question of the day. He'd be a good follow. But I was talking to him the other day, and he works for a small 30-person company. But what he talks about is, how do we do things in the basic ways? And so collecting that feedback from your front line could be as simple as, I'm not exaggerating, sheets of paper, or the electronic version of that. It could be that inside, if you're a contact center, it could be some note-taking ability that the agent has easily at their fingertips to be able to just note that, and it goes off to a team that is ready to absorb those notes. The most important part there is not so much the tool, but the intent, what works for your company and how you can capture that frontline feedback. The how is probably more inside of your company, but more importantly, it's the choice to do so. And the telling of the frontline, we care about what you have observed. We want you to share that with us.
Perfecto. Tenemos otra pregunta de Elizabeth. Ella dice, ¿cuál es tu opinión respecto a la compensación al cliente cuando hay un quiebre de experiencia con el cliente?
Another one of those questions, which I love, because this is a question that comes up a lot. And my shorter answer is, it depends. right? That's a bit of an easy answer. But can I answer it in a little different perspective? And that is, do you trust your employees? And if you have the kind of employee engagement and the kind of trust with your employees and the kind of culture that is put in place with your employees that allows you to say to an employee, make the right choice. And there can be guardrails, right? There can be well, we're not giving away $1 million. We're not giving away 14,000, whatever's, right? There can be guardrails. But if there's a culture of employee empowerment, a culture of employee engagement, a culture of employee trust, then that question becomes easier because you say to the employee, you decide. Nordstrom is famous for its stories. I don't think it's true anymore, but Nordstrom, a brand, a luxury retail brand, is famous for accepting returns even if they don't sell the product. They just trust their employees to do the right thing. I've heard rumor, I don't think it's true, but the story is told that their employee handbook is one sentence, and that is do the right thing. Now, of course, there's more to the handbook than that, but the theme of do the right thing and trusting your employees to do the right thing is how I'd answer that question. I recognize there has to be guardrails, but inside of those guardrails, trust your employees to do the right thing.
Perfecto, Rick. Bueno, tenemos otras preguntas. La siguiente es de Ana Gabriela. Ella pregunta, si el ratio de respuesta de encuestas es muy bajo, no mayor de 2%, dice, ¿qué puedes aconsejar para que esto incremente? Y desde tu experiencia, ¿estaría bueno decir que los resultados han sido sesgados por detractores?
I like that because there's a lot of questions in there. Sorry, let me unpack that for a second. How can we increase survey response rate? Well, the first thing I'd say is, why are you increasing survey response rate? Understand why you want to do that first, because I could get you to increase survey response rate easily. I'm going to exaggerate. I'm a Texan. I exaggerate. Every response gets $1 million. Well, I can increase your survey response rate to 100% if I do that. But that's not really the objective. What you're trying to do with your voice the customer is understand what your customer is telling you about their experience. And so what I'd say is that your customer is speaking to you in so many different ways that if you're listening to all of those ways, a low email survey response rate may not be as much of a concern if you're also listening to your front line, if you're listening to social media, if you're watching and tracking user behavior on websites so that you understand where they get stuck, where purchasing decisions are made and when they're made. Those are the kind of things that can help solve for a low survey response rate. Now, let me also be a little specific when it comes to surveys. The other thing that I'd offer is, how good is your survey? I have been incredibly disappointed with surveys. I had one that said to me in an email, hey, we hope that you fill out this short 15-minute survey. Surveys at 15 minutes are not short. That is a bad design. So guess what? I didn't fill out that survey. So I'd say that there can be a way to increase your survey response rate by looking at the quality of your survey. Do you ask too many questions? Are there questions in there that nobody actually does anything with? You just have the score so you can look at it. Those kind of things can help improve the survey response rate. And then the last thing I think you asked was about detractors. Absolutely. You can always find that the ones that are the least happy and the most happy are the ones that will speak to you, but that's okay. If you're truly listening in a total global sort of perspective around all of your customer listening posts, that will balance out.
Perfecto. A ver, vamos con la siguiente pregunta. Rick, ¿de qué manera la estrategia del Customer Experience puede ampliarse a los no clientes para convertirlos en clientes?
Ooh, for the non-customers to become customers. Okay, I thought that question was going a different direction. Okay, how can it be? Word of mouth. That's the easiest answer. How many times have you said to someone, oh my gosh, this restaurant was amazing. Oh my gosh, my experience with, well, no one says that about a cell phone. No, my cell phone provider was great. Oh my gosh, this car is fantastic. If you have a great experience, you often tell about it. And guess what? If you have a bad experience, you often talk about it as well. So the word of mouth is one way of doing that. Another way, and I can't remember who said this to me. It was on one of the podcasts, but I'm forgetting. That's why I do the podcast, because I get to learn. But they said to me that using your positive customer stories on your social media, basically your outreach, instead of selling a product, sell an experience, and talk about that in a sincere way. We don't have time for it, but I would encourage all of you, if you don't know the story already, go out there and just Google WestJet. It's a Canadian airline. WestJet Christmas flights, Christmas presents. There is a beautiful story of how WestJet did a shocking surprise and delight for customers on a Christmas season flight. That social media story went absolutely widespread. And so in an authentic way, sharing your positive customer experiences rather than just selling your product can be a way for your non-customers to hear and understand what a great experience you might have.
Perfecto. A ver, tenemos un par de preguntas más. Nos dicen, ¿cómo relacionarse con el cliente de una forma más humana? Tomando en cuenta que ahora, post pandemia, como decías, muchas empresas han digitalizado y automatizado varios procesos y canales.
Good. Oh, I love this question. Did you see my face? That was authentic. I got actually really excited about it. Can I tell you a phrase that I hate in English? And that phrase is call deflection. I hate it because I don't ever want to think that a customer is having their call deflected. Instead, I want to be able to create digital experiences that provide digital solutions for a customer that wants a digital answer. I want them to be able to provide human solutions for a human question for a customer that wants a human channel resolution. I'll give you an example. I hate making restaurant reservations. I do all of my restaurant reservations with this little device right here. I have no intent of calling a restaurant. I love digital experiences there. But if I have a problem with my flight and I need to talk to somebody, or if I have a financial transaction that went wrong, I don't want to deal with a chatbot. I want to talk to a human. And so being very thoughtful about what are the digital experiences that solve digital needs and what are the human experiences and the human channels that solve human needs is the way that I would approach that question.
Perfecto. A ver, tenemos algunas preguntas más. La siguiente pregunta justo nos escriben. Dice, ¿qué es lo más difícil en gestionar un programa de voz del cliente? ¿Qué es lo más complicado que has visto en tus experiencias?
I'm going to answer with two answers. The first is getting started. It is amazing how difficult it can be for a company, for a team, for a person to just do something new, to do something extra, to change the way they're operating. Getting started is often the most difficult part of it. That's the first answer. The second answer is the sustaining of it. When you go after a total voice the customer approach or a program, I don't want you just to think about day one or week one or month one or even year one. Think, how are you going to sustain this program ongoing? Because new things get a lot of excitement. There's email communications, there's celebrations. Hey, we're starting this, lots of buzz and excitement about it. But then it becomes routine and they get bored with it. And so be thoughtful in a total voice of the customer approach of the hardest part is getting started, but then what is it going to take to sustain this, to keep it going? Be thoughtful of actions do I need to plan for months in the future and years in the future to make sure that this continues to stay an attractive and viable and meaningful program.
Perfecto. Ya para pasar con la última pregunta, Rick, nos describen lo siguiente. ¿Has tenido la oportunidad de tener alguna experiencia en Latinoamérica? ¿Qué te parece el nivel de CX en LATAM?
Boy, how long do we have? No, I'm
En
kidding.
menos, 8 minutos aproximadamente.
I need 7 or 8 hours. So can we go ahead and do that? I have had many experiences in Latin America. Because I live in Texas, I've had the opportunity to travel to many places here. I've had the opportunity to travel to Costa Rica, to Mexico, to Brazil, to Peru. And here's what I have found in Latin America. And some of these are dated experiences, so I can't speak to as much current. But what I found is a real depth of heart. And that is one of the hardest things to create. So maybe there are some transactional elements that are maybe not there. Maybe the digital experience isn't quite where it needs to be in this one town in Costa Rica, or maybe I have to actually go into the restaurant to book it, or something like that, right? But the heart is what I have felt all throughout my travels through Latin America. And I mean this sincerely. That is one of the hardest things to create. And so culturally, I think Latin America is going to be ahead of the world when it comes to customer experience, because you're starting from the heart. You can layer the tools, you can layer the systems or the process or the technology, but you can't create the heart. Latin America has that heart. And that's why I love being able to have interacted with folks here, both as a business person, as a tourist, and as having guests on the podcast. It has been a eye-opening, meaningful exposure to customer experience in LATAM because of the heart.
Perfecto, Rick. Esas han sido todas las preguntas del día de hoy. Ha sido un honor tenerte. La verdad que ¿qué tal cierre del último día? Es el quinto día de experiencia. Ha sido toda una semana del CX. Nos ha encantado tenerte y estás invitadísimo para una próxima edición. Muchísimas gracias por todo el conocimiento que nos has brindado. Demos un aplauso, si se puede, mediante chats, mediante emoticones. Mira, Rick, para que veas todo lo feliz que está la gente contigo. Gracias. Gracias a ti y bueno, continuamos con el desarrollo del evento. Que tengas un gran día, Rick.
Gracias. Adiós.
A ti, muchas gracias. Bueno, nosotros continuamos con la última fecha de Xperienzium. Ha sido genial, ha sido fenomenal tener a Rick acá. Creo que puedo hablar por todos. La verdad que siento que cada vez que pasa una charla siempre vamos teniendo más y más y más conocimientos, y eso creo que solamente hace que nos sintamos mucho más felices de las cosas que estamos haciendo, ¿no? ¿Qué tal cierre? ¿Qué tal gran día de la semana del CX y el día del CX que estamos viviendo el día de hoy? Bueno, y acá viene la tanda de agradecimientos, porque sí, ustedes saben de que si no tendríamos a nuestros auspiciadores, nada de esto se ha podido llevar a cabo. Así que bueno, ustedes ya los conocen: el CXPA, el CDPUC, el Dr. Sex, Ameba, Customers Cubes, Question Pro, ACX, Customer Employee Experience CX Latam, Consumer Institute, y bueno, también gracias a los lugares que nos dieron para las charlas presenciales: C-Starts, Space, Communal Coworking, TIN Magazine, Genesis, Customer Experience Professionals Association, más conocida como la CXPA, y la IF, que ayer nos dio el lugar para el evento de Santiago de Chile, que también me han contado que estuvo espectacular. Así que ya saben, eso ha sido Xperienzium: 5 días de eventos virtuales, 3 días de eventos presenciales, y se viene muchísimo más porque siempre estamos mejorando para ustedes. Ahora sí les quiero contar así súper rápido, porque ya me acaban de confirmar que Stefan se encuentra al interno, a qué nosotros nos dedicamos. Clientrika, hacemos 5 servicios básicamente: consultoría, formación, transformación de la experiencia, gestión de los programas del voz del cliente y soluciones digitales. También tenemos un vasto portafolio de servicios: estrategias en experiencia del cliente, mediciones de experiencia, customer experience, pero enfocado en economics, retención y fidelización de clientes, y por último, transformación organizacional, enfoco siempre a la CX. Ahora sí, también me estaban preguntando sobre el Clientrika Academy. De hecho, toda la información la estamos dejando en el chat que pueden ver en la barra del Zoom. Así que bueno, nosotros nos encargamos de la formación básicamente de lo que es el CX y brindamos las certificaciones de Customer Experience Management Expert, más conocido como CX Max. Ahí tú puedes ver dentro el Career Path y también credencial de Clientrika avalada por la CXPA como Recognized Training Provider. Así que ya saben, acá nosotros nos encargamos del crecimiento, el Career Path, si estás más interesado en saber temas de CX. Bueno, y si te ha gustado lo que acabo de decir, todo lo que somos Clientrika, la formación, el Career Path, simplemente escanea QR de tu celular o de tu cámara, escanéalo y nosotros con gusto vamos a estar dispuestos a contestar tus dudas o tus consultas, o si quieres tener una reunión con nosotros para explicarnos más sobre tu negocio, igual con mucho gusto vamos a estar dispuestos a escucharte. Igual toda la información, todos los links los estamos dejando en la barra del chat para que puedas entrar a un enlace directo. Entonces ya continuando con el evento, ya, wow, han sido, qué rápido, en verdad se ha pasado todo desde el día lunes. La verdad que nos hemos quedado impactados con la cantidad de gente que ha presenciado estos eventos y sobre todo nos hemos encargado que tengamos un gran broche de oro el día de hoy. Así que, bueno, vamos a empezar ya con la última charla, nuestro último keynote speaker, para que ustedes hemos tratado que, como les digo, este viernes sea el final de broche de oro y queden ustedes un efecto wow, es lo que nosotros estamos esperando de lo que es Xperienzium CX Day 2022 Edition. Ok, ahora sí me confirman que se encuentra el interno Stefan Osthaus. Hola Stefan, ¿cómo estás? Bienvenido a Experiencia en nuestro último día para cerrar con broche de oro contigo. ¿Qué tal?
Muchas gracias. Buenos días, Sandra.
Muchas gracias a ti, buenos días, buenos días. Entonces, para que la gente te conozca un poquito, voy a presentarte, ¿ok? Stefan Osthaus es de Alemania, es presidente actualmente del Customer Institute y ha liderado empresas de la lista de Fortune 500 y ha asesorado a organizaciones multinacionales durante más de 20 años. Su foco de trabajo se especializa en la gestión de la centricidad del cliente, más conocida como Customer Centricity. Así que bueno, el día de hoy Stefan nos va a presentar los 5 pasos, así que anoten, son 5 pasos para una excelente experiencia del cliente. Así que, Stefan, Xperienzium es todo tuyo. Bienvenido.
Thank you. Thank you. And muchas gracias for the very warm introduction. Apologies. I am here in a big conference in Latin America and I don't even speak Spanish. I'm really sorry. So welcome, Lorena. You will help me, won't you?
Sí, Lorena te va a estar acompañando como la traducción.
Very good. So let's go. And when I was invited to join on this last day of a wonderful week and share for the better part of half an hour or more relevant content with you, I was a little bit questioning myself, what do I bring that can wrap up a full week of insights and great discussions? And I brought the help of some friends. So let me briefly introduce the Customer Institute to you, but I'm going to pause for Lorena to quickly catch up with us here. Good. And I am, Sandra, can we hear Lorena? Because I can't. Can you please?
Ok, sí, claro. A ver, todas las personas que nos están escuchando en la barra del Zoom pueden poner, pueden seleccionar el idioma. Ok, todo perfecto, nos están. Ok, ya, Stefan, todas las personas te pueden escuchar ahora. Por favor, confírmanos si puedes comunicarte, si Lorena se puede comunicar contigo. es una traducción simultánea. Mientras tú vas hablando, Lorena te va diciendo exactamente, te va traduciendo a tu idioma.
So sorry, Lorena, can you hear me? Okay, well, I get some comments here that everything is perfect. I don't hear Lorena, so no worries. I will keep going and pause every now and then for Lorena to catch up with us. So the
Stefan, no te preocupes, disculpa que te interrumpa, no te preocupes que ella está traduciéndoles a las personas que te están escuchando. Así que tú habla tu idioma, no hay problema, y ella está traduciendo a todas las personas que nos están escuchando. Es a tiempo real.
Perfected. Let's go. So what we're going to do, the Customer Institute is a not-for-profit organization that many of you might have heard about before. We are a go-to destination for excellence in customer centricity, and we have a wonderful board of directors of 30 plus top brands like Microsoft, like Air Liquide, we have SAS Satellites, we have Airbnb, we have some of the top consultants and thought leaders, and we have some of the best teachers of customer centricity around the globe from universities and continents all over the planet. So these are my friends I asked today about what are we going to share with a group of specialists that know everything already. You know your survey response rates, your net promoter score, you have built successful teams, you're measuring CSAT and all these wonderful things. What can we wrap up a wonderful week with? So I asked my friends about the 5 top tips for great customer experience. And one of the important notions that came from all of the directors was times have changed. And one gave me this wonderful examples. You have the Andes as the mountains in Latin America. Here in Europe, we have the Alps. And one of the most impressive ascents in the Alps is the Eiger North Face. And until the 30s years of the past century, many people have died trying to ascend the North Face. And finally, in 1937, people were successful in climbing the North Face, and it took them 3 days, and they actually almost died. And I think this is similar to what many of us have tried in customer centricity, what we have built in becoming more customer friendly, and it is also representative of many of the improvements we made in our companies. So here we are, very proud of what we have achieved, and we think we have been fast and we have been good. And just like the people who climbed Eiger, look what happened only a few decades later. So this guy, where people have almost died and spent 3 days climbing Eiger, did it in less than 3 hours, only a few decades later. And this is happening to us as well. So what we all have learned this week and seen that customer and employee experience are a passion. They're not a project for 10 months or 12 months. It is something we have to stay on top of. It's like climbing a mountain, except this mountain keeps growing as we try to improve. It is a mountain that has to do with the expectations of our customers. Fortunately, Customer centricity can be summarized in one mathematical equation. Everything you need to know about customer centricity is in this mathematical equation. And it is satisfaction equals reality minus expectation. So think about your last party, last Friday maybe. You didn't really want to go, but your better half said, we must go to this party, people are expecting us. So your expectation was very small. Yet the party was nice, the drinks were wonderful, the food was good, and the people had a good time. Reality was really big. Minus the small expectation you had a very big satisfaction about the party. Next week, you are looking forward to a birthday party of your friend. So you have huge expectations to see your old friend again, but the drinks are warm, the caterer didn't deliver, and the music isn't so nice. So all of a sudden, reality is smaller than your expectation, and you go home disappointed. So that's what I mean when I say the mountain keeps growing when we try to improve customer centricity, because the expectation of our customers are constantly rising. Now, let me give you an example. When we do mail order and we order something from our favorite online retailer, a few years ago, people were really happy that they don't have to go out to the retail shop in the heat or in the rain or in the snow, but that the parcel delivery person would bring the parcel to our home. This was awesome. A few years later, we wanted to have a choice between different delivery services. DHL, UPS, or Amazon, or you name it, what your local delivery partner is. I'm sure you by now have a preference between them. Very soon, like here in Germany, we want sustainable delivery of parcels. So now we want electric delivery vehicles. Actually, I want my parcel when I'm not at home as well. I want a method where maybe Amazon can already deliver in my apartment or into a special box that they provide me. Here in Germany, Audi has a collaboration with DHL. So DHL can actually drive to my car wherever it is parked and remotely open my trunk, put the parcel into the car without me doing anything, close the car again, and I find the parcel in my Audi vehicle. And very soon I want a drone to deliver my parcel. So you can see how the expectation is constantly growing. So the mountain of customer centricity management is growing as we climb it. The higher you get, the more professional you get, the more you have implemented from this week, the more important it is to now choose the right next steps. And I brought you 5 tips from our board of directors where they prioritized the sophisticated tips and tricks for customer centricity management. Now, for climbing a mountain, we assume you have your basics lined up. You have your voice of the customer. We don't need to speak about raising response rates. You have already your team in place and your champions established. I'm not going to speak about that. You've heard plenty about these things this week. Today, I want to speak about 5 things you might not have on your radar yet. And the tip, counting down from 5 to 1, tip number 5 is guide your CEO. He or she are not a mountaineer. They are not experts in customer centricity. So what I mean with this tip is help your CEO to help your customer centricity initiative. Provide your CEO, for example, with a Meet a Customer program. Set something up so that your company leader can have a script on when and how to get in touch with customers so that he or she don't live in an ivory tower. Secondly, provide your CEO with a communication script. Your CEO will be at town halls, at company all hands. He will have press contacts. And if you want your CEO to deliver a customer-centric message, provide it to them. write it up in a few bullet points, and give them a new script every week. Make sure they have a communication platform. And when you start your customer centricity initiative, go and visit your CEO and schedule some time for a cup of coffee and discuss these things. Write down a formal agreement, not in a legal way, but in a in an unmistakable way of how the customer, the chief executive officer of your organization can support the customer centricity initiative. If you do these things together, you can make sure that your understanding of customer centricity conveys to your CEO and he or she can support you in the best way. The next tip I would like to give you is make sure, like when climbing a mountain, you stop every now and then, and you make sure you review your current status quo. In our world of customer centricity, the most popular tool for that is an assessment. So make sure, if you're a consultant, that with your clients, you have regular assessments of the status quo. If you're a practitioner in an organization, make sure you get external help to assess your current view. And if you're unsure about the methodology for that, the Customer Institute provides you with a wonderful toolbox of 3 methodologies that you'll find details about on our website. What they do is they apply the same principle to looking at 10 dimensions of, for example, customer centricity. That is one of the assessments we provide to consultants around the globe. The second one is customer support maturity, where we look at 10 different dimensions on how to improve your customer support capabilities. And the third out of the 3 similar methodologies is an employee experience assessment. So whether you use the methodologies you already have available or whether you turn to the Customer Institute assessments, doesn't matter. Just make sure that every now and then, every 2 years, and particularly at the beginning of your journey, you make time for a situation analysis and you quantitatively and qualitatively map down your current status quo. The third tip for today that I'd like to share is take care of your Sherpas when you want to climb a mountain. Now, customer centricity and employee centricity are 2 sides of the same coin. There's no doubt about it. You can't have happy customers if you have unhappy employees. You can't have happy employees if the customers are unhappy and keep yelling at your employees and keep complaining about everything that goes wrong in your organization. So if you want to make sure that your team, your customer experience team, as well as everyone in the organization who support you, has a great experience themselves, link the 2 initiatives. So when you come back to the office on Monday, find your chief people officer, your head of HR, and have a cup of coffee with him or her to discuss what your organization, or if you're a consultant, what your client's organization is doing on the employee experience side. The reason is very simple. If you imagine the annual kickoff event and your CEO being on stage, and you have done a great job, and your CEO will now speak about how customer-centric your organization will be. And the CEO now jumps up and down and says, we will be the most customer-friendly organization in the world. The level of excitement you can expect from the team is only limited. Because number one, that's a message we've been hearing for years and decades, and you want to give people something to understand what's in for them as well. So imagine the same CEO at the same kickoff event jumps up and down and says, we want to be the most customer-centric organization in the world, plus we want to be the best place to work for you. There will not be a better employer for you to work. Now, That is something that you can easily set up if you work with your head of HR. The tools and methodologies that you bring to the table from the customer centricity side will help on the employee experience side as well. Surveys, you're experts in voice of the customer, implement voice of the employee as well. Ideation workshops, involvement, cultural change, all of these things are in your DNA. You know how to do it. So sit down and agree with the HR department that you combine your two efforts and that you have a combined experience initiative. It will be difficult for HR to follow you. Usually the customer experience teams are better funded, have more resources than HR. In many organizations around the world, the HR departments have been reduced to barely administering employees. So be patient and be generous. If your counterpart on the HR side doesn't have the same capabilities, muscle, and resources as you do, then maybe you have to carry a little bit more of the burden. But trust me, if you combine customer and employee experience, the mojo for the overall initiative will become much better. Because then you can start to listen to your employees as well. And they will give you extremely valuable insight into what you can improve, what you can do better for your customers, and at the same time, what you can do better for your employees. The result will be better team attrition. You want to attain your top talent. Those are the guys who make your customers happy, and it will help you to fill open positions. In many economies around the world, we're coming to full employment, to a severe lack of experts. So if something like this is coming to your economy as well, you want to be ready and you want to be a good employer with a good employer branding that helps you to fill the ranks with employees you can then listen to in your voice of the employee and whom you can then involve in the improvement initiatives. When I was still in the corporate world and when I was the head of customer centricity for an organization with 120 million customers, we also had 20,000 employees, and I was the head of employee experience for them as well. Whenever I traveled to one of our sites worldwide, I always blocked 1 hour in my calendar where I went in the meeting room, ordered pizza, and there was an open invitation for everyone on the site to come and join me and just discuss what could we do better. You wouldn't imagine what you hear from employees as improvement opportunities if you just take the time to sit with them and have an open conversation. No employee survey, no annual employee net promoter score. Just sit down and speak with your employees across the organization, and it will give you incredible insight on what can be improved, and then you can involve the employees to actually make it happen. Now that's tip number 3. Take care of your Sherpas. They lead you to the top of the mountain. So that is something where you will definitely benefit from taking good care of them. Now, the next step in what you should focus on when you come back to the office next week is to explain everyone again and again why climbing this mountain is important. Why is customer centricity important? You know that, but many people in your organization have not smelled the carrot yet. So what is the carrot of being customer centric? You should clearly demonstrate the return on investment. If your initiative has just started, then trust me, you have about a year to, let's say, 18 months to prove the return on investment, and then your CFO will lose patience and you will lose your job. I've literally had this in my consulting practice with clients where 12, 14, 16, 18, 24 months into this customer experience initiative, the program had still not done any ROI calculation. And I warned the head of customer centricity, we must do this now. And it got postponed until the head of customer centricity was gone. Now, how do you do this in the most pragmatic way? Let me give you a 30-second tip on how you measure customer centricity in your organization. If you have a voice of the customer program, pull 600 respondents from it, where you have a net promoter score or a CSAT score or whatever quantitative sentiment score you got from them. Now you have that Excel list of 600 respondents with their sentiment score. Now go to your CRM system and pull the data of those 600 customers. Then find somebody really smart in your organization who can do multivariate correlation analysis in Power BI or SPSS or some other tools. So you know what I mean. You want the data guy. And now you analyze the data, the qualitative sentiment data you got with revenue, churn, average shopping basket, whatever is the important KPI in your organization. And then the data guy will tell you the correlation that is most significant for you. And you will be able to say, for every point of increased customer satisfaction, our shopping basket will go up X%, leading to $4 million more revenue every year. That's 1 day of work, maybe 2 days of work. But if you don't this early in your initiative, you will definitely lose the support of your executive team. Now, if you have done that, if you have questions about how to do this, contact us, and we're very happy to help you set this up. Now, if you've done that, you have now said for every increase in customer satisfaction, our revenue goes up. People will now look at you and wait for results. Typically, and admit it to yourself, we are too busy to communicate our successes. Block this in your calendar. Every fortnight, write half an hour, block half an hour in your calendar to celebrate and communicate the successes that you've had. The new channel that was added to your Voice of the Customer program, giving you more insight into a whole group of customers. The wonderful letter you received from a customer, the improved net promoter score because of a change you made in your contact center. Acknowledge that all of these things involved a lot of work from your team and other stakeholders across the organization. Don't take a shortcut celebrating these successes, because they will make sure that next time you knock on their door, you'll get the success and the support. Now, I mentioned the letter from a customer. If we get them, celebrate them. So every positive feedback of a customer, you should really send to the responsible department or even the individual, thanking them for the great effort they put in order to let the customer come back with a big praise or as a very very satisfied customer. In summary of the second tip, everyone, and again, you can't communicate this too often. You will get annoyed about this message much earlier than everyone else in your organization. Now, my last tip on the list before we will open it up for some questions here is remain innovative. And that is so much easier said than done that I struggled on how to summarize what you can do here. But my directors helped me. The first tip is actually from myself. You're probably in a very busy environment as a consultant or practitioner. And in many parts of the world, your vacation days are just enough for you to recover from the hard work that you do. My advice to you is to take time out of your calendar in business time and make sure you create creative formats for yourself. In my life, once a year, I go and sit on an island for a whole week. So literally, I'll grab my iPad and log out of everything else, and I'll sit underneath a palm tree for 2/3 of a day and think and develop new things. And for the remaining third of the day, I work out and eat wonderful food and drink wonderful wine. But 2/3 of a day for a whole week, once a year, I block to innovate. Find what works for you. Have the Friday morning walk through the nature. Have the run in the evening but before the regular end of your business day. So the innovation time, don't cut out of your regular private time. You already work enough. There's no need to add this to your working hours, but within your working time, find your creative time with a predetermined frequency to make sure you get out of the rat race and out of the hamster wheel to innovate. And you'll see how this will make an impact on the period afterwards, the year or the month afterwards. Great things come from that. Then when you work with your team, change the place and the method of your innovation workshops. Don't only have your mural or your Miro board in your Teams call, or don't only use post-it notes in your innovation workshop whiteboard when you meet face-to-face. Go out and sit with them on the lawn. Go and hike with them for a whole afternoon and discuss topics. Go into a very innovative place, play games with them. Make sure that even your team understands that in order to stay on top of customer centricity, we need to change the way how we look at things. And the last element of this, in my eyes, most important tip here is look more often at what others are doing. I don't know about you, but many of my clients and people we speak to in the Customer Institute around the world always say, our competitors do this, our competitors do that. But wouldn't you agree that customers get their inspiration of what customer experience is outside of your competitive environment? They will look at an airline, at a restaurant, at their telecommunication provider, or at the hotel they stay at. So make sure that you and your organization, and if you're a consultant, your client organizations, not only compare themselves to their direct competitors, because that actually doesn't make much sense. Customers don't buy from your competitors. Customers buy from places all over the industry, from B2B, B2C, whatever they experience in the B2C space over the weekend, they bring back to the B2B space on Monday when they come back to the office. Now, that was the fifth tip here, remain innovative. And I would like to actually summarize those 5 things for you to take with you, with all the notes you took this week. Make sure that as you go back to the office on Monday, and as you try to implement as much of the notes that you took and as much of the great ideas you took, put those 5 elements into your calendar as well. Block creative space regularly so that you can continue to be creative. Make sure that you prove the return on investment of your initiatives regularly, or you will lose the support and the interest of your organization and your leadership team. Make sure that you are not running a pure-blooded customer centricity initiative only. Make sure you have as many employee experience aspects involved as possible so that you can involve your Sherpas and provide them with a great employment experience as well. Determine your position while you climb the mountain regularly by running assessments at least every 2 years, giving you a new pulse check of where the room for improvement is and what you can do to exploit it. And last but not least, we started with that, look upwards into your management team and manage them. We all have a responsibility to manage our managers. They need to understand what you need. They need to understand how much more you can take on or not take on. And they need to understand how they can best support you with the right messaging, with the right contact to employees and to customers. And so hopefully these tips will help you to take everything you learned this week back home next week. And I wish you all the best for taking the insights and turning them into your work reality. And with that, if you have any questions, now would be a good moment to ask.
Hello, Stefan. It was really enjoying and we love it, your presentation. In order to listen to us in English, you have to change the icon that it says interpretation in the bottom of this chat. It's like an word icon.
Let me
You
see.
have to click on it and put English. Just let me know when you are there. Just click on the icon, interpretation, and then put another click on English.
Yeah, I don't see an icon that has that. I'm in the Zoom chat just to make sure, right? I'm in the Zoom chat now.
In the Zoom check, you have to put, it's a world icon. They said interpretation on the top, on the bottom, sorry, on the bottom of this Zoom window is a word.
So let me first.
It's in the middle of this window.
Yeah, actually it is not. So let me first.
It's not in the chat. It's not in the chat. It's just between backstage and reactions.
I seem to have a different view than you. None of the no, sorry, none of the. I'm going to stop my sharing the screen.
Okay, don't worry. If you want, I can.
Now I have found it. Let's go.
Okay.
I had to finish sharing my screen first.
Okay, that's okay.
I can. Apologies for the delay.
Don't worry, that's okay. Thank you. Ok, ahora sí. Ahora sí vamos a empezar con el Q&A. Bueno, ya tenemos algunas preguntas que nos están haciendo los invitados, los participantes. A ver, empezamos con, nos preguntan, me pareció súper el punto de hacer benchmarks. ¿Crees que podemos mirar casos de una industria y llevarlos a otra? ¿Cómo hacerlo?
Please explain what you mean with benchmark. You might have translated something there. Are we speaking about proving the ROI or the assessment? Which element is this question related to?
Okay. Básicamente comparaciones entre industrias.
Okay, yes. That's almost one of my favorite questions. Because clients always ask it, right? When we come back with an assessment result and we say, all right, you have scored 700 out of 1,000 points. And people say, how do we compare? How do we compare to our competitors? How do we compare to other good companies? And honestly, my answer always is, you don't. You don't compare yourself to others. Except when you're on the golf course and you play with another CEO and you want to show off how wonderful your company is. Then you can say, yay, my net promoter score is 75, and you can laugh at them for them only being 45. But that doesn't give you any insight. There's always a reason why your score is higher or lower. There's always a cultural bias because you are in Peru and somebody else is in Bolivia. Somebody will always say, yes, you're a train company and we're a car rental. So comparing to somebody else never gives you any insight. The truth is you should compare yourself to yourself. So how was your score last year? Have you improved? Well done. Have you gone down? You need to change something. Have you improved fast enough as you wanted to? Congratulations. Maybe you were not demanding enough. Have you not improved fast enough? Well, never mind, as long as you go up, maybe you were too demanding. So sorry, I don't want to be flippant about that, but I think cross-industry and even cross-company benchmark comparisons in the same industry, I'm not a big fan of them.
Perfecto, gran aporte, Stefan. Tenemos la siguiente pregunta. Nos dicen, ¿qué tan difícil es tener un foco customer-centric en la empresa? ¿Cuánto crees que demora según tu experiencia?
First of all, it was never more difficult than today. We just had a session last week where we spoke about customer centricity in times of crisis. And the word crisis has a singular and a plural. In the past, we would use the plural and say, what if there is one crisis? How do we maintain focus on customer centricity? Well, today we don't have one crisis. We have many crises at the same time. Climate crisis, military crisis, health crisis, you name it, economic crisis. So first of all, before determining how long it takes to become customer-centric, we must understand that it is a marathon. You should never stop. You should not run too fast to not blow your resources too quickly. You can walk if you're tired or if there's a crisis, but you should never stop. Your customer centricity initiative is like a very long cargo train. Once you stop, it takes immense energy to start the cargo train again. You can go slow, and then with very little energy, you can go faster again, but never stop. So that's the first bit of advice I would like to give everyone in times of crisis left and right. Now, how long does it take? We have a standard program in our shelf that is called the 100 Steps to Customer Centricity, and it's a 3-year roadmap. Now, that is to help set expectation with clients that this is not a 6-month program, but an initiative. It doesn't mean that after 3 years you're done. And it doesn't mean that you could be done after 2 years or 4 years, but it helps everyone who's not in our trade of customer centricity understand that this is a journey and not one jump. So to give you a little bit of a feeling, typically we see increases in maturity of a customer centricity level by level. You might all know the 6-level maturity model, and in principle, if you stick to your program, you can ramp up one step, one maturity level every year. But again, that's a very stereotypical reply. Probably you will have 5 million reasons why you can be faster and 6 million reasons why you can be slower, but that's approximately the journey speed.
Perfecto, perfecto, Stefan. A ver, tenemos otras preguntas. José nos dice, ¿cuál es tu recomendación en caso el CEO o la gerencia general no se involucre con el programa de Customer Experience?
Great question. This can have 2 reasons. If he believes in customer centricity, or he could be convinced that customer centricity is good, then it is your next task. Then you need to manage your CEO. You need to educate your CEO. You need to explain the CEO, the return on investment. You need to show the CEO what they can do in order to support the initiative. So if the CEO is supportive, it's your problem, and you should manage your CEO to a point where he can best support you. Like we, for example, have formats like executives briefings for the C-suite, where in half-a-day program, we explain what customer centricity is, what the secondary research says about it, and how it is typically implemented in an organization. Now, the second situation is a little bit more severe. You do not need to be customer-centric. There are other strategy options that work as well. You can go after fast internationalization. You can have a very short window of opportunity with your product and you want to maximize sales because you will be gone 2 years from now. You can have a technology drive in order to be acquired by another company really quick. All of these strategies are commercially valid without you having to be customer-centric. If that is the case, you need to change the company as a head of CX, because then you are fighting for the right sunbed on the wrong ship, and you should probably get on a different ship.
Perfecto. Estefan, acá tenemos más preguntas. Jorge Aguayo nos dice, hola Estefan, para calcular el ROI que nos genera un punto de NPS, ¿comparan el ingreso que generan los promotores versus los detractores? ¿Tienes alguna referencia bibliográfica o artículo que podamos leer para aprender a calcularlo?
Great question. It's actually very, very individual to organizations. We have seen the detractors and the neutrals being the same, and the promoters showing a big difference. There you can then focus on moving the neutrals to being promoters, and you can look at the detractors later on. With other organizations, we have seen the promoter and the neutral lines being almost identical in the multivariate correlation analysis, and the detractors falling off in terms of commercial KPIs like average shopping basket, churn, revenue, or else. Now, so there's no standard solution. You need to analyze this for your own organization. It's like a fingerprint. You cannot use your neighbor's fingerprint to open your laptop. It must almost always be your own fingerprint, and your net promoter score to commercial success correlation is your organizational fingerprint.
Genial. Y bueno, tenemos una última pregunta. No, tenemos más preguntas, pero Ricardo nos dice, ¿se puede aplicar este enfoque en el sector público o entidades de gobierno? Qué interesante.
Actually, I'm wearing a t-shirt because I just got off a plane from Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, where we're in a project with a large public sector organization. Friends, we have the best jobs in the world, don't we? Our expertise on customer centricity travels from B2B to B2C to public sector. It doesn't matter which country you are in. It doesn't matter which industry you're in. It doesn't matter your sector. What we have to offer in terms of expertise on how to become customer-centric is in principle the same across all the things. Voice of the customer or voice of the citizen works the same. Looking at data, deriving insight from the data and turning it into improvement action is our credo across all sectors. Facing customer cultural change challenges in organizations is our fate across all sectors, all industries, all continents on the planet. That's good for all of our career planning. So if you're done with your company because your CEO doesn't support customer centricity, find a new job, and you're very flexible. It can be in any industry, any sector, because what you know about customer centricity will apply there as well.
Perfecto, gran respuesta. Y bueno, y ahora sí tenemos la última pregunta. Nos dice, ¿qué tan importante, Stefan, es la gestión del cambio en la transformación del CX? Justo hablaste mucho de los espacios de conversación con los equipos y gerentes.
That distinguishes our job as an art from a skill. If it wasn't for cultural change, we might as well be a plumber. You have a sink and a pipe, and you have water, and the water needs to go to the sink, and it's very easy. And you can learn it in 4 weeks, and then you're a good plumber. Sorry, if any one of you is a plumber, I didn't mean to be disrespectful. So you can learn a voice of the customer program, you can calculate ROI, you can talk to your CEO. All of this is a skill that you can learn, but cultural change is an art. So meeting the typical heritage of an organization, the typical optimism and pessimism of its employees, the typical inertia of we've always done it this way over the past 2 decades, and turn this into innovation is where you can turn into the true heroes. Everything else is you just wear a helmet and you work on the construction side and you build the customer centricity program. But the culture change is where we can all wear our capes, be superheroes, and shine as the artists that we are.
Perfecto, Esteban. Con eso ya estamos terminando la sección de preguntas. Ha sido un honor tenerte. Thank you for your time. This was an incredible ending to this event, Xperienzium. Y bueno, ya para continuar un poco con el evento, vamos a despedir a Stefan. Si podemos hacer muchas reacciones de aplausos, por favor. Gracias, Stefan. Excelente ponencia. Todos nos hemos divertido, todos nos hemos aprendido bastante y puedes ver todas las reacciones que te estamos haciendo. Gracias a todos. Nos hemos quedado súper contentos.
Thank you. Adiós.
Chao. Que tengas un gran día. Nos vemos. Bueno, con eso nosotros hemos ya cerrado la última ponencia. ¿Qué tal les pareció? Como les prometimos, hemos cerrado con broche de oro y gracias, Stefan. Solamente también tenemos que decirles gracias a ustedes. Ha sido la verdad que 5 días de lujo, 5 días de eventos, 3 eventos presenciales, pero ahora sí necesitamos su feedback para mejorar cada vez mejor, cada vez nos queremos retar, crecer, necesitamos, por favor, su retroalimentación para que nosotros podamos ir haciendo mejores experiencias, cada edición mejorando año tras año. ¿Okay? Pero bueno, ya cerrando, ahora sí, finalmente, ¿no? Hay que agradecer siempre a nuestros partners, que sin ellos no hubiésemos podido ver este evento realidad. Hay que agradecer al Official Partner, que es la CXPA, a los Technology Partners, que son Customer Scoops, ustedes ya lo conocen, Question Pro, Genesis, Media Partners, que son el Dr. Sex, que de hecho también se presentó en estos días, TN Magazine. Y hablando de los Academic Partners, están el CDPUC, el CXP Recognized Training Provider y Customer Institute. Y hablando un poco más de los Community Partners, también tenemos CX en Latam y ACX. Por último, agradecer a los partners que nos dieron los espacios para estos eventos presenciales. Ellos quienes son CitySpace, CityStars, en Lima, Comunal, Coworking, Ameba e IF. Así que muchísimas gracias a todos ellos. Los esperamos en una próxima edición que sin ellos no hubiésemos podido lograr este magnífico evento. Y bueno, ya para cerrar, les digo que por favor no se pueden perder el gran sorteo. Gánate, ten la oportunidad de ganarte un ebook. Ya no vamos a sortear 1, sino 3 porque hemos tenido gran acogida en redes sociales. Ya saben, nos pueden escribir en Instagram, en este chat, o en LinkedIn. Nosotros vamos a estar con gusto reposteando, dándole likes, conociendo sus historias. ¿Qué vamos a sortear? 3 libros. Hemos analizado muy bien libros especializados en CX y van a estar en idioma español para que los podamos leer sin problema. ¿Qué títulos son? A Life and Well, edición en español, de Lalo Durón, Universidad de Disney, de Doug Lip, y por último tenemos Driven to Delight de Joseph Micheli. Así que bueno, todos estos son top sellers, son bastante rankeados en el mercado del CX, así que pueden ser tuyos. Y cómo es súper fácil, ustedes ya saben cómo es. Responden de qué manera el CX está impactando en tu vida o impactado o crees que va a impactar después de todo lo que hemos traído nosotros en Xperienzium. Hacer el comentario en este chat o en estas redes sociales como LinkedIn e Instagram. Etiquetarnos junto a 2 amigos y listo, con eso ya estás automáticamente concursando. No te olvides, si quieres hacer un Insta Story también vale, todo vale. Quizás hacer un Insta Story más fácil, no importa, lo que tú desees, nosotros vamos a revisarlo y ya saben cuándo vamos a decir a los ganadores la próxima semana, porque vamos a esperar que hasta el día de hoy hayan más comentarios. Pueden hacerlos hasta el día de hoy a finalizar el día. No se olviden que con eso estarán participando en este concurso y automáticamente van a recibir estos ebooks que los hemos pensado con mucho corazón para todos ustedes. Ahora sí, es el momento de la clausura de Xperienzium. Ha sido como les digo, días muy, muy bonitos. La verdad que me da una pena dejarlos porque ha sido un evento bastante único y memorable. Ha sido un honor tenerlos el día de hoy. Pero con ello quiero dar pase a nuestro CEO de Xperienzium, Sebastián Muner, nuestro director, Sebastián Muner. Hola, Sebastián.
Gracias, Sandra. ¿Qué tal, chicos? Buenos días. A la hora que estén en cada uno de sus países, solamente para agradecerles, de verdad, que este evento no habría sido posible sin ustedes, ¿sí? Sin cada uno de los asistentes. Gracias por todo el feedback, lo valoramos muchísimo. Y a nombre de verdad de todos los directores de Clientrika, incluyéndome y también en mi rol como miembro de la Junta Directiva Global de la CXP, les agradezco haber hecho parte de este evento. De verdad que ha sido un gran esfuerzo. Gracias a Sandra, Heidi, Betsy, Alonso, a todo el equipo organizador, de verdad que se han sacado la mugre para poder llevarles a tiempo, con toda la calidad, y espero que les haya gustado, y sobre todo las cosas que se vienen a futuro, ¿no? La verdad que ha sido con cariño, con gran esfuerzo que estamos trayendo esta difusión de la experiencia del cliente, desde Clientrika, Xperienzium, y también con nuestro official partner que es la CXPA, para ustedes, y ya nos veremos pronto en un siguiente evento, y estaremos haciendo también eventos presenciales, que ya hemos hecho en Perú, en Chile y en México, y les estaremos comentando. Gracias de todo corazón y espero verlos pronto, chicos. Un fuerte abrazo, de verdad.
Gracias a ti, Sebastián, por tus palabras. Ya saben que nosotros como Clientrika vamos a seguir con más eventos, vamos a traerle más conocimiento, solamente necesitamos retroalimentación y ver en qué cosas podemos traerles más ideas. Nosotros siempre pensando en lo mejor para ustedes, para esta linda comunidad que se ha formado en estos días. Qué bárbaro. Estamos más que agradecidos por su sintonía. Y bueno, con eso nosotros ya cerramos Xperienzium. Con mucha pena, pero también con mucha felicidad. Han sido 5 días, 3 eventos y como Sebastián dijo, se viene muchísimo más. Gracias a todos. Desde acá les doy un aplauso a todo el equipo al interno, a todo el backstage, a Heidi, a Betsy, a todos los ponentes. Mil gracias por estar, por sintonizarnos. Muchas gracias y sobre todo a ustedes, a los participantes que han estado con nosotros los 5 días o un día, 2 días, 3 días, no importa, pero han estado brindando conocimientos, haciendo preguntas, han estado haciendo nuestras redes sociales. Nosotros valoramos y agradecemos muchísimo ese engagement, ese commitment que estamos buscando. Así que ya saben, se viene muchísimo más de Xperienzium y de Clientrika. Muchísimas gracias por todo y ha sido un honor. Ustedes ya me conocen, Sandra Linares, así que encantada de acompañarlos en una próxima edición. Muchas gracias, que tengan un lindo fin de semana y que tengan un gran día. Nos vemos, cuídense. Gracias a todos.